Recording in progress.
All right, Council, we will call this Tuesday, June 9th study session to order. If the clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Rashino Farrell.
Here.
Mayor Josh Amato.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Train.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Boyer.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Debbie Train.
Here. Here.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Treen, if you'll please lead us in the pledge.
Stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Lamb, would you please read the land acknowledgement statement?
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Up next, we have public comment. Thank you very much. I'll call up those who have signed in here, and then anyone else in the audience who would like to, after they are done, may give their comment. We have Jeff Burgard and then Heather Murphy-Rains. You'll have 3 minutes to give your public comment. At the end of 3 minutes, I will start to talk you off the podium. Go ahead and come on up.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jeff Burgard, and we are here from Pine Lake Middle School. This is the third time we've been here. We came in fall to talk about how we impacted the transportation system in the midwinter, about energy systems, and today we're here to talk to you about how we've impacted the waste system. I have 3 students here who'd like to share their impact with you.
Students help the city advance these goals by doing impact projects. The physical science department, with the support of sustainability ambassadors, had their students choose projects to learn about our waste and wastewater systems and help our city reach their goals. For my impact project, I donated unwanted clothes to Value Village.
85.1% of the solid waste redirected was secondhand donations, 1.7% was no waste lunch, 5% was hazardous materials, 2.5% was plastic, 0.8% was metal, Food was 2.7%, plastic bags were 0.1%, and paper was 2.1%. Out of the wastewater diverted, there was about 200 pounds of trash diverted. I'm gonna say about 25 pounds of like fat and grease and that kind of stuff. And then maybe like around 170 pounds of biodegradable cleaners were diverted.
Students participated in waste reduction actions like donating old clothes, recycling cardboard and paper, composting, and keeping trash out of our wastewater. Overall, students made the most impact by donating or purchasing 3,055 pounds of secondhand items. One student even signed up for the Ridwell program. Students diverted approximately 3,590 pounds of waste in 1 week.
All right, thank you very much for your comments and for coming here tonight and sharing with us your efforts. We appreciate it. Up next, we have Heather, and then anyone else in the audience who'd like to give public comment but didn't sign up, you can line up behind the podium if you're able. Thank you.
All right, Heather Murphy-Rains, 20-year resident. It was shocking at the last meeting to hear such strong staff pushback against polling the broader Sammamish community about Building 120. While an anonymous internal staff poll was promoted as meaningful input, staff perspectives should not be treated as a substitute for transparent feedback from the residents who own this public asset, fund city operations, and live with the outcome. It was clear that many residents did not want high-density apartment towers or a regional growth center model imposed on Sammamish in the last landslide election. However, that does not mean residents oppose thoughtful community investment. Many people still long for a place that brings us together, and Building 120 may be the best opportunity we have to create that civic heart. Please conduct a transparent community poll through the city newsletter and other jot form if needed. Public meetings, schools, senior networks, and community organizations. Ask residents to rank options such as the teen center as the garage, senior center, conference rooms, affordable meeting spaces for community groups, event spaces, cooking and dance classes, symphony concerts, portable pickleball, summer camps, concerts, movie nights, and family activities. Fiscal sustainability must be central to the plan. And as Mayor Amato has suggested, a well-run thrift shop could generate steady revenue to help cover utilities and city staffing. Event rentals, wedding conferences, classes, corporate sponsorships, and possible continued paid parking arrangements with Microsoft could further reduce the burden on taxpayers, as would corporate renaming rights. The parking lot could host winterfests and winter markets, summer concerts, and the return of the haunted house. Local DECA students could use their entrepreneurial, budgeting, and marketing skills to help operate and promote these events, while seniors could volunteer as mentors, greeters, instructors, and organizers to cover staffing. Most importantly, let the public weigh in. You were elected to represent this community, and representation begins with listening. And yes, although I personally do not support selling Building 120, as opportunities of land and building owned by the city come rarely, the poll should be honestly include that the selling option. Please do not decide what the community wants without asking us first. Building 120 should become a way to bring Sammamish together, not another missed opportunity. I urge you to ask the community what services they would actually value and use. I also urge you to ask whether they would support purchasing land and habitat for undeveloped conservation parks and trails so we can preserve Sammamish's forests and wildlife habitat for future generations. I certainly would not want to use the UW maps to map wildlife out of our vibrant community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else in the audience like to give public comment? Okay, do we have anyone for pre-registered online public comment?
Yes, we do. Those who would pre-register to provide online comment, please raise your hand if you'd like to give comment at this time. Promoting the first commenter. Jillian, whenever you're ready.
Greetings, Jillian Wallace of the historic town of Inglewood. And tonight I'm phoning it in, but I'll be watching tonight's study session on YouTube. First of all, yay for our pollinators. I am proud to be a bee city, and I personally think there is a very little that is cuter than a fuzzy round bee who is dozing in a sunbeam or on a flower while totally drunk and covered in pollen. We need that pollen for our emerald greenery, but we also need that local honey for our allergy shots. It's taken several decades, but my local pollen reaction is significantly reduced from my younger days growing up here in Sammamish. And then compared to my kids, they have snot coming out of their tear ducts. There's so much. But buy local honey and you get nature's protection. By promoting our local flora, like our state rhododendron, our pollinators will naturally gravitate and create that special algae nectar that we all need to combat the seasonal headache that everyone gets when we go outside at this time of year. At my house, we have what we call a smorgasbord of wildlife, enticing local flora in our yard. We take plants and seeds like the one that Ace Hardware sent home with us from the farmer's market a couple weeks ago and put them out for the local fauna to enjoy. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our local team of nature sports supporters who shared at May City Council meeting that it was free during the month of May to apply to be a certified wildlife habitat space. And I, in turn, shared it with my neighbors. And now we have new certification signs up. Yay! And then for tonight's business, I lend support to Public Works' incoming suggestions on combining items within the capital improvement product plan. First, I like the sidewalk gap project being combined with the school safety metrics. Places like Inglewood, a critical spoke of our traffic matrix, where students can't safely walk to what was once a walking-only school. Then the Future Forward Strategic Plan, identifying the needs that our communities require to nurture our unique geography, a parking garage transit station here in the heart of city. Our local shops are being strangled by the lack of parking. If we want shops to flourish, we need to have parking available. Mostly, I want to address Inglewood's IBC entryway. Going from sharing the intersection with Eastlake High School at my old condo on Northeast 4th Street to no street safety at all has been a huge transition. Building 120 was once my front yard. Now in Inglewood, this messy non-intersection where 5 roads connect is nestled in between 2 blind turns. As I was pulling out the other day, I almost was T-boned by my neighbor. Luckily, he was going just under the speed limit of 35, but we narrowly missed each other. Even when we know that it's a dangerous, non-existent intersection, danger can't be avoided. We need to get out, but we also can't see when we pull into traffic, and you can't see us when it's almost too late. It takes slowing down to 25 on Inglewood to be able to see around those blind turns. And that's not going to happen until we get proper signage and lineage for our safety. Under the Sidewalk Gap project, we get sidewalks around 216th. Oh, thank you.
Yep, thank you very much.
We have one other pre-registered public commenter. One moment while I promote them. Paul, when you're ready.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I appreciate the other comments tonight, all of value. I sent in an email this afternoon that is a one-page summary of a couple snippets from some emails I've sent over the last couple months that I call Prosperity for Posterity, and it's to attain improvements for residents, city, and workforce by adding market rate housing to the comp plan. And I thought I would speak in unspoken today. I've had a lot of folks talk with me about stressing the fiscal benefits of doing this, and that's accurate. But I'd like to talk about the underarching benefits in just a second. And here's what I mean on this. Let's assume for argument's sake, which isn't the case, but let's assume for argument's sake that our city had a good mix of market rate housing that I call B and C housing, from 500 to $1.4 million and some high-end condos. And we were in a optimal place. We had a good mix of housing for people for stages of life and future generations. But we had a significant fiscal problem. If that were the case, and we were contemplating adding housing over and above what our community needs are, that would be a serious discussion to have, is do we want that housing added because of the fiscal being out of balance? Well, fortunately, the opposite is the case. The amount of shortage of market rate housing in what I call B and C, and the affordable housing that's already in our comprehensive plan, is far greater than the numbers I've been suggesting, and there is tremendous fiscal benefit from doing it, as well as the environmental, social character across the board. So I'll just read my 3 closing sentences from the one page I turned in today. Why add market rate housing that's genuinely needed based on internal housing needs, not regional growth, is to actualize housing needed so residents can stay over time and for a generational legacy for those that want to create assets for transportation infrastructure deficiencies inherited from King County before 1999, and for fiscal sustainability also, and to realize holistic enrichments to virtually all elements that comprise our great city. Take a look at the comments I've sent in. There's lots of links, and all the background is there. Appreciate the chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
That's all for online public comment.
All righty, thank you. Up next, Councilmember Stewart, will you please read the Pollinator Week proclamation?
Absolutely, thank you. Whereas research indicates that native pollinator populations have declined significantly in size and geographic range across the globe, it is estimated that up to 40% of pollinator species worldwide are at risk of extinction in the coming years due to a range of environmental pressures, including habitat loss, pesticide exposure, disease and pathogens, and climate change. And whereas, as shared by Bee City USA, the theme for this year's Pollinator Week is Bring Back the Pollinators, urging people to take action to protect our pollinators. And whereas the Xerces Society has shared 4 actionable steps on how to protect our native pollinators by growing pollinator-friendly flowers, providing nest sites, avoiding pesticides, and spreading the word. And whereas the City of Sammamish encourages residents to take part in the celebration by learning more about pollinators, engaging with sustainability efforts, and supporting actions that protect the habitats of these essential species depend on. Now, therefore, Josh Amato, as the mayor of Sammamish, does hereby proclaim the week of June 15th to the 21st as Pollinator Week in the city of Sammamish, and encourages all residents to consider the vital role pollinators play in our ecosystem and to take meaningful steps to ensure their survival for the benefit of future generations.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I'd like to invite our Public Works team to come up, and we will go through the Public Works 6-year capital improvement plan preview. Did David Pyle lose straw drawing or coin toss to go last at this meeting?
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. We're quite excited tonight to show you a preview of our 6-year capital plan for both transportation and stormwater. These are initial lists. You'll find many of the project details in the agenda bill. It is a short novel, but happy to answer questions along the way. We do have some breaks in our presentations, but feel free to jump in if you have questions with each slide. Not sure. We have a brief overview of the capital planning process. This is pretty similar between parks, facilities, and public works, but thought we'd showcase that since we were first up tonight. And then a quick highlight of our accomplishments in the last 5 years, and then where we're headed for the next 6 years. So just quickly, we pretty much start our planning process about a month after council adopts the last plan. Cost estimates always change. Bids come in back differently. We're always analyzing different prices. Project scopes tend to change. And there are always unknown things that happen, especially in the winter months around here that we need to adapt to. So we spend most of the 5 months of the first half of the year finalizing projects, accruing additional data, looking at numbers, seeing how things align. Then we're presenting our draft list this evening. We will be back in July. We'll release the draft list in August, and we'll be back throughout the fall. Sorry, I have terrible allergies. Capital plans are critical. They're actually required for transportation planning for the state. We have to transmit our capital plan by July 1st of every year to the Washington State Department of Transportation. In Sammamish, as we combine our transportation plans with all of our other capital plans, we actually do ours in advance, if you will. So we will transmit our plan this year. We do our plans about 7 months in advance. They're critical for grant funding and funding partnerships, showing our funding agencies where we're headed. And as you know, as we are just embarking on George Davis Creek, sometimes these planning efforts take 10 plus years. As we're able to, we do like to incorporate new technology and trends as they arise throughout the planning horizon. So sometimes those costs and, sorry, your alignment may shift. All of our plans effectively implement our master plans for the community. So our Sammamish Comprehensive Plan, our Transportation Master Plan, and our Storm and Surface Water Master Plan. These capital plans are a 6-year look ahead. And then, of course, they will inform the next budget cycle. The slide is referring to the current budget cycle. This upcoming planning window will inform the 2027 through 2028 budget. This is a little bit kind of behind the scenes of some of the work that we do. We have multidisciplinary teams that work on this effort, from our planners and engineers and engineering technicians and our inspectors and our maintenance staff. All combined efforts. We meet almost weekly for many months of the year as we're really reviewing projects, their alignment with all other plans. And we're, of course, updating our project scoring if we need to. If new plans have been approved in the last year or so, updating our cost estimates, and then moving forward. In March and April, we're developing, I have some, just, I need the pollen to, yeah. Pollinator mode? Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. In March and April, we develop what we call our preliminary plan, which is our very first draft, which is what you'll see tonight. In that process, we're looking at delivery sequencing with our workload. Thank you. We look at cost and risk analysis. We also look at the project urgency. You'll see some projects in the agenda packet this evening that may rise to the first kind of 2-3 years of the capital plan versus the 6 or 7 year horizon, just due to their need. We also look at projects across the board. We've combined programs and projects from both transportation and stormwater this year too. And of course, we are always on the lookout for grant opportunities, as well as we do have some funding constraints on what those dollars can be spent on. As I mentioned before, once we refine that preliminary plan, we'd like to release it on our website for broader community feedback. We'll be back in July and in August with the 6-year capital planning effort and the budget process. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Andrew really quick to describe this slide while thank you.
Microphone. All right, so as Audrey was alluding to, there's a bunch of different considerations that go into project programming. We have a whole universe of projects we pull from. When thinking about that, you have the city-wide comprehensive plan, the stormwater comp plan, the transportation master plan. You also have sub-area plans, corridor studies, modal-specific plans like bike ped and transit. And then we also look back at the prior year CIP to look at what's changed, what's still priorities, what have we learned in terms of maintenance and rehab needs. And then we also take what we've heard from council and the community as well. So we have all of those projects that are filtered into the scoring criteria. Those are scored based on if they are major projects, typically at the criteria that's overall for the SWIP or the TIP. But we also have criteria specific for bike ped and for different stormwater programs like the retrofit program as well. We also look at capacity across project managers and staffing levels and try to balance projects out by year. And then we look at urgency and need. That's a big part of our rehabilitation programs, is how urgent is this project if we don't act now. And then, as Audrey was mentioning, funding considerations is a big part of this as well. Funding availability, and then also what are our projections. And then we'll talk more later about things like transportation impact funds and other funding programs where there's very specific eligibility percentages we'll be looking at as part of that project mix. And then grant requirements are a big part of it as well. Not just the timeline of when you're applying for grants and when you have to spend the funds by, but what is going to be a competitive application for the evaluation criteria.
Thank you. As Andrew mentioned, all of our capital plans do implement our comprehensive plans. Won't read the entire slide, but in the blue box is our direct quote from our adopted transportation master plan, which really focuses on connectivity and developing a multimodal network across the city, and a multimodal network that prioritizes maintaining and preserving our operations in a functional state. Similar to the transportation quote and the goals, you'll also see themes throughout stormwater: protecting, enhancing, and preserving our natural assets, especially with stormwater. That's our natural waterways. As Andrew was mentioning, when we initially evaluate a project, it's either placed into a program of like projects, so they compete with each other, or into a project category, which has some similarities, but not all. All of our programs have very unique scoring criteria, such as ADA. Those are aligned with national standards. Our pavement preservation program has different criteria, stormwater retrofit, et cetera. Our project categories utilize the same scoring criteria for all the projects, except for a handful of the bike and pedestrian projects. So the bicycle and pedestrian projects have a little bit different scoring just because they are so unique in nature. They are really looking at different things like the key generators in their walk shed areas or the bike shed areas as noted in the adopted transit plan, as well as the bike and pedestrian mobility plan. Example of one of our programs on the right-hand side of your screen is the stormwater retrofit program. That criteria was developed alongside the 2022 stormwater retrofit strategy. Since then, it has evolved, and staff has made a lot of really great recommendations on how we can prioritize that work going forward. As you're looking at projects and plans across the board today, most of these projects are funded either through the Transportation Fund, which is known as the 340 Fund, or just the 340. Those revenue sources for that fund is from real estate excise tax, or REIT, and it's also balanced with transportation impact fees, or TIF. That is a specific funding source that can only pay for projects that have growth in them, and Andrew will talk a little bit more about that later on tonight. Stormwater can only pay for stormwater. It is an enterprise fund. That particular program also funds some transportation projects if there are stormwater components within that projects, and both of those funds do not receive any general fund dollars. We love grants, so any chance we can partner with a local, state, or federal grant, we do so. There are other partnerships sometimes available to us between schools or agencies. We've had several recent projects lately where we've been able to partner with City of Issaquah or King County and other regional partners as well. Quick question break. Any questions on how we prioritize projects?
There are no lights on. Anyone? Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. You'll likely recognize this slide from the April presentation on capital projects. This is just a reminder of the different phases that capital projects require. So sometimes that planning phase actually takes 2 to 10 years, depending on the project complexity and the funding availability. Usually preliminary engineering takes a few years, design phase 12 months, but usually 2 or 3 years, depending on the complexity, and construction is usually the fastest phase, anywhere from a few months to a few years. These are just a handful of the projects that we have been working on. Not all these are necessarily right in the public eye, although some of them are. You're all very familiar with the Solid Way Corridor Study, which is in progress. We also, many years ago, began a corridor study for the town center roads, 216th, 17th, 18th, and Southeast 8th. You'll see that on our list for recommending completing that in the next 6-year window. We've completed alternatives analysis for 212th Avenue. This is the section of roadway where there's some gaming baskets supporting a sidewalk that are settling. Although we're not recommending moving forward with replacement at this time, we are monitoring that multiple times a year, so we're watching the settling rate on that particular sidewalk section. And finally, East Lake Sammamish Parkway, the road stabilization has several spots that have some settling issues. This was a project that we did submit for funding for. It was a priority project for the city. We're monitoring that. We're expecting some additional data and analysis to come back that would likely be able to tell us how quickly we might need to move on repairing some of those sections. And finally, there's other sections that we are monitoring. We have amazing maintenance crews that have been working on some spot failures for the boardwalk on Southeast 24th, but that will need to be completely rehabilitated, if not completely replaced, in the next few years. There's some other spots along 24th, so you'll see in the packet and later on in the presentation several areas along Southeast 24th we're recommending consolidating that into one project. Finally, we've had many projects go through design phase, so I won't list all the construction projects that are in active construction right now, but many are completing design in the next few weeks and are planned for 2027 construction. Other projects have been paused due to either just staff capacity or the Hazel Wolf wetlands. We learned a lot, but recognize that will entail a much broader project and some downstream work as well before that one can advance any further than 30% design. And finally, construction phase. You're all very much aware of all the great projects we have that either are in construction right now or will be beginning construction this summer. We just had actually a bid opening today for one of our projects, so very excited for that contract to come to council in a few weeks. In addition, we've had yearly ongoing programs for our ADA barrier removal program, our pavement preservation program, many of our programs that occur every year. They have design and construction in 1 year, and those are improvements that the community sees on a day-to-day basis. In addition to that, we have completed 2 amazing projects that happened to win some awards. The Ebright Creek Fish Passage Program won a local Outstanding Civil Engineering Achievement Award in 2022. That same year, the Issaquah Fall City Road Improvements Project won a national award for excellence in engineering, and this is the Academy Awards of Engineering, so it's a very big deal. So where we're headed beyond this next 6-year planning horizon, both transportation and stormwater are working on developing plans for years 7 through 12. As I mentioned before, these projects often take more than 6 years to plan. We want to know what we're going to be allocating dollars to beyond year 6. So we'll be focusing, in addition, on project implementation, and alternating design and construction and programs, as well as inventorying all of our assets and really gearing up a high-level asset management programs that will help us give us some more data for some of our assets and construction management. And transportation has been working on finalizing transportation performance measures. Those will go to council, along with the update for the 2028 Transportation Master Plan, which we are planning to complete ahead of the requirement in 2029 for the Growth Management Act. Stormwater, again, is updating those 7 to 12-year lists. They will be updating their storm and surface water comprehensive plan in the next budget biennium, which will really be a comprehensive review of all of those project and program categories. And along with that, they'll be completing a rate study that'll accompany that 6-year plan. Finally, before I hand this off to my partners here, do you have any questions for what's ahead or what we've accomplished?
No lights.
Okay.
We're good.
I'm going to take a break. Here you go.
Thank you, Audrey. All right, so Matt and I will be talking with y'all about what the recommended projects are and the recommended program changes for stormwater and transportation. This map is up here to just kind of give a general sense of the distribution of the projects throughout the city for both stormwater and transportation. I know it's kind of zoomed out, but it could also maybe be helpful to orient you to any of the projects. We can always come back to the slide. If helpful, just let us know. So with that, and we'll have the map again at the end of the presentation, I will turn it over to Matt to talk through stormwater.
Thank you. This is a little bit of a repeat, but just covering the funding for stormwater capital projects a little different than, so it's the enterprise fund, which is mainly funded through stormwater rates for existing households and businesses. And this is kind of just an opportunity to return back to the information about the rate being set up in 2022 and established for a 6-year model that was based on the plan at that time. So we've adjusted it throughout the years, but then as we go into 27 and 28 to the comprehensive plan for stormwater, we'll also be doing a rate study, and then we'll start that 6-year model over again as we look at that rate and consider the past 6 years. So it's a little bit of a different 6-year, but this is a good planning process that will inform the next budget until we get there. So in addition to the rates, also impact fees and grant funding is an important part of this funding for capital projects. We've had success with the Bryan Abbott fish barrier removal, but we're looking to also increase our success at the Department of Ecology funding through water quality for retrofits specifically. So here are the categories that are in the stormwater capital program. And so just in general, having good categories is a really great way to communicate from staff to council, from council to staff, and from council to residents. A good example is the small drainage resolution. Every city has small drainage issues. For the most part, they're really important to the residents that are close to them, but from an engineering standpoint, frequently these aren't a huge hazard or a huge risk, but they are important. And so having a category that addresses something like that really speaks to staff and informs staff that this is an important issue, but informs at what level it's going to be handled at. And then there could be an appropriate way to take those in the door, categorize them, and say, okay, well, we could do so many, but then at some point, that's all we're comfortable addressing. So it's a good way to communicate with both staff and to residents as to the demand and how it's been sought to be met. So we've got the small drainage projects, storm rehabilitation program, facility retrofits, restoration, and the mid-tier. There's a lot of overlap between the restoration and the mid-tier projects, between 50 and 300,000. I think we wanted to take approach to not change the categories too much before we enter this comprehensive planning process in the next 2 years, because that would be the time when we'd look at those groupings along with the rate study. So we left them mostly unchanged. And then the major category titled SW 600. So the proposed changes to this group, so we have 2 major retrofit projects that are going to construction next year. And after that, we'll be looking at selecting the next project to be the next retrofit project. But with the number of basin plans that have occurred since the last rate study, we want to do a little bit of a better look at the whole of the project grouping with consideration of constructability and the percentage of impervious acres treated, just as a way of, so we don't go too far down a pre-designed road and find ourselves in a little bit of a quagmire, and also want to make sure that that value is there for the dollars that we expend. But again, that'll be somewhat of a administrative process, and as we go into this next comprehensive planning process, we'll look at addressing it holistically and incorporating it into our larger process. And in terms of the program funding, we look to alternate design and construction years to kind of create a better pace so that we can intake projects, wrap our hands around them, complete the design, and then the following year go to construction. And the funding, for the most part, didn't change. We just shifted it from a 2-year to a majority of the funding going to the second year at construction. And in terms of the schedule for the 100 to the 400, they'll be ongoing. They're planned to be ongoing for design and construction, alternating throughout the planning period. As I was indicating earlier, the mid-tier, there's a lot of overlap with this restoration. So we have one project in there for the beginning of the planning period, and we'll look to address that as we go through that comprehensive planning process. We'll have George Davis will be wrapping up next year, along with Lori. The Lori Estates outfall diversion will go to construction next year as well. And we'll begin the process for design and for the Queens Bog bioretention, and in 28, the 24th Street bioretention. Our goal in those two projects will be to look at applying for design grants this year and next year for the following year, and then subsequently construction grants once we've gone through that ecology design process. And then we have several other projects going out into design, out into 30 and 31. We will have construction in 31 and 32. It's just right now, I think it's important for us to regroup, come to that end of that 6-year rate cycle, if you will, and lean on that comprehensive planning process to bring in all the basin plans that we've created between the 2016 and 22 to now, and bring those together and have a way to comprehensively look at all those and make sure we're making value-based judgments. Any questions?
You look clear.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll be talking through transportation programs similar to Matt, both ongoing and major projects. As I was saying earlier, a lot of it is largely unchanged from the prior CIP, but we do have a few proposed changes to ongoing programs and a few major project additions, and also talk through some new connector projects we're proposing to add and how those interface with utilizing transportation impact fees. For the ongoing programs, we are looking to modify and combine two programs. The first up is the Small Sidewalk Gap Program, and then the School Zone Safety Improvement Program. As you can see, the School Zone Safety Improvement Program has been funded at a level where you're really looking at maybe some pavement marking and some signage. So when we were doing the bicycle pedestrian mobility plan last fall, we had a number of safe routes to schools projects identified in that plan, everything from bicycle lane striping to small sidewalk projects. So we thought combining the two could give a new life to that school zone safety improvement program and have it be more of a school access program. So one project that Audrey covered earlier is Southeast 32nd Sidewalk. That is moving forward. So we looked at the total design and construction cost of that project, and it lines up with the current funding levels. So we're not proposing to change that funding level. We are also looking to modify the neighborhood traffic management programs funding level and where it lives, but not modify that resident-driven program itself. So currently, similar to the school zone, you can see it's funded at a level where it's mostly going to be enforcement, awareness, some stop signs, signage. So we wanted it to be in a broader program that had a greater funding amount, so it could pull from that funding program as well. And then that safety and speed management program that it would live under would also make it so staff could identify and it not just be all resident driven, smaller to mid-sized projects around safety and speed management that we could implement within the CIP period. And those could not just be within neighborhoods, but on arterials and collectors as well. Next up is the streetlight enhancement program. Staff has made a lot of progress in converting streetlights to be LED. So in a few years, all those conversions are expected to be met. So then after that, we're thinking if you're having a sidewalk project, you would just add street lighting as part of that project and larger projects if the need is there. For the ITS program, we are not proposing a change in average annual funding amount, but we are looking to program additional funds in outer years for a strategic plan update or a strategic plan creation. The transit enhancement program, we're proposing to keep that funding as is. Staff's been working in the background to identify top priorities for crosswalks and bus stop enhancements along transit. We're also looking to make sure we identify projects that have other benefits as well, such as access to crosswalks by schools, parks, commercial, not just along transit. And then I know Audrey's touched on ADA barrier remediation and pavement back in April, so won't go too much into that, but we are proposing to keep those at the current funding levels. All right, so now on to major projects, and bear with me, this is a lot of information on the slide to walk through. As Audrey mentioned, we are proposing to continue the Sahali Way corridor study in the near term to continue that momentum. And ideally, towards the end of that process, we could move forward a top implementation project. We were thinking the roundabout at Northeast 28th might be a good implementation project. It has benefits around traffic calming, safety, pedestrian access through the crosswalks there, and access to transit. And our thought is this would follow adoption of the corridor study, but if for any reason it were to not follow that, the project could be implemented on its own in theory, if so desired, given it's such a compact intersection. Whatever the bike ped cross section is in that corridor, you'd have to kind of taper it into the roundabout similar to the one on like Northeast 8th to bring the facilities in. Audrey mentioned previously the two corridor studies, and these are both two that we've applied for grants for. Typically, the grant criteria will ask that any project be listed in your CIP. So we've programmed these currently to line up with how they've been in the CIPs previously and what we applied for with the grants. If they were to not be received, we may look to shift these out a little bit further to help us focus on some of the rehab and sidewalk projects and connector projects. Audrey covered, the corridor study west of those roads, west of town center, was put on hold during COVID. That's to finalize what the bike ped cross section is for those roadways to help with implementation. Issaquah Pine Lake Road is a similar study looking at what are the bike ped needs, but also you have transit in the corridor. And then in the southern half, we will also be looking at what are the roadway capacity widening needs in that corridor as well. We should know on the PSRC TAP grant for the West Town Center roads later this month. The WSDOT Safe Routes to Schools grant we'll probably know this winter or early next spring. For rehabilitation projects, we have a lot going on in the 24th Street corridor. We're looking to figure out if there may be potential to have some, if not all of those projects under one contract for ease of project management. We're still kind of working through what exactly the phasing is and the design is for some of those projects, but we view it as a near to midterm for all of those projects. As you saw in the photo earlier, that boardwalk for the pedestrians and the carpenter ant issue there is probably the top concern in that corridor, but you also have a residential driveway that crosses the boardwalk that is settled below the boardwalk due to the peat bog in the area and all the settling. There's also the road of the approach coming from the west at the bridge deck that's a little bit, I'm sure you've all experienced the bump driving over that. That's issue. And then the bridge deck itself has some inspection repair needs to deal with as well. And then as Matt was noting, there's also a bioretention cell stormwater project in that area as well. Similarly, East Lake Sammamish Parkway also has a few places where there's been some settlement and rehabilitation issues. There's currently 3 different places along the corridor, and we're working with our consultant we've done investigation of the issue. We're working on the designs for the different phases and still figuring out exactly those costs and how they may be programmed in different phases as part of that project. But we see that as definitely a near-term priority, possibly mid, depending on how it's all phased and staged. Next up, we have 2 sidewalk projects programmed in the 6-year window. Inglewood Hill Road, I'm sure you're all familiar, is a priority we've heard from the community. about. That is filling in the gaps between 213th Place Northeast and 216th Avenue Northeast. That's where there's no sidewalks on either side of the roadway, so it's filling in that gap there. Proposing that as a near-term priority, given this has been in the CIP previously. A new addition to the potential project list is the next one, 228th Avenue Southeast, bike and ped improvements between Southeast 33rd Court, that's kind of Pine Lake Middle School area, down to the southern part of the city limits going towards the future high school in Issaquah. This was the top scoring bike ped project out of the bike ped mobility plan. There could be additional projects that we program in this non-motorized program. We're still kind of looking to see where the rehab costs and other projects come in as part of that funding analysis and staff capacity and transportation impact fee analysis we'll be working on this summer. And that brings us to connector projects. I'll talk on the next slide a little bit more about how transportation impact fees plays into that. But we have a number of connector projects. I think 6th Street and then the bottom one, the signal relocation, were in the prior CIP, but the others are new additions. 6th Street Phase B is a continuation of that Phase A project going towards 228. The city owns 75% of the frontage of this phase, so we thought this could be a good opportunity for the city to take the lead on determining the roadway design, parking, stormwater, placemaking, traffic calming as part of that project. 5th Street, the Notch property frontage is a little bit different given we don't have as much of the frontage percentage. So that one we're proposing a bit further out to sync up with what we currently understand to be potential timelines of that potential commercial development north of the site. And then Belvedere Way connection at Beaver Lake Drive, that would be a connection that would connect the Trossachs neighborhood in that residential area in the northwest part of the neighborhood. Currently, there's 2 entrances for that large area, both on Duthie Hill Road. The thought here is having this connection doesn't just help with connectivity, but emergency access, emergency management. We have this line depicted a little bit longer. We expect the process to take longer, and that it would be similar to a transportation impact analysis study we would do on the front end with a lot of council and community involvement throughout to understand what, if that connection's made, what the needed traffic control would be at that intersection and in the general area. And then whatever, if that continues forward, whatever, we would move into design and construction following that transportation impact analysis. And then the last 2 projects are ones that we've kind of put in the outer years as a kind of wait and see what happens with those projects, how they're needed in the 6-year period. The first is this Southeast Connector feasibility study. This is a potential roadway shown in town center plans that would go from Southeast 8th parallel to 228th, but to the east, and connect somewhere up in the town center area. It's a little unsure where that northern terminus would be, and where plans showed it going previously is not feasible due to topography. So this feasibility study would look at where exactly it might terminate, or if this is just kind of an internal development only connection from Southeast 8th. We've had development inquiries in that area where we haven't been able to clearly advise exactly where that road could go now that we know it's not feasible, where it's currently shown. In 228th at Main Street, that signal relocation is kind of a similar project. You have the signal at Main Street, which is right between Met Market and Building 120. It would essentially shift it 1 block south, and moving it south would allow for a connection that would go kind of back behind Met Market and connect to, I think, the 224th over back to Southeast 4th. Where the signal is currently, there's too much steep topography, but if you moved it 1 block south, that connection would be possible. So for these, we're proposing outer years just to kind of wait and see when and if those might be needed in this period. So I mentioned earlier, connector projects are very much tied to transportation impact fees. I won't go into TIF too much because I know that's been presented a lot to y'all recently. But this slide really just shows that your corridor studies, those implementation projects, rehab projects, sidewalk projects, they have a pretty low eligibility percentage for utilizing TIF funds. For that entire 6-year period, you're looking at maybe around 800,000, a little under $1 million for all of those projects combined. So the approach staff has taken currently is to propose a combination of TIF projects spaced throughout the CIP period to help us draw down and utilize before they expire that average annual amount of around 1.65 million in those TIF funds. So that's kind of the rationale for some of these connector projects and how we've programmed them. So with that, happy to take any questions or feedback y'all may have on the preliminary transportation recommendations.
Okay, Council, I'm going to open, we'll start with questions, and then if someone has a proposal for something to be added to this, it's certainly something we can talk about, but please think about when you propose that idea, because we'll want to see if there are 4 people in support of moving forward, so staff has a clear direction on if that's something that has some council support. So with that, I'll start with Councilmember Trine.
Thank you, Mayor. So first question was, did you study or look at, analyze, so I'll just start the choke points leaving the city. So if you go where the school district is going to build a new high school and you come in through that road, we got that little narrow area where almost no bike lane even there. I guess it would really just be a shoulder. It looks like it might be a good bridge project based on what's on the east side of the roadway, but that's clearly an area that's a choke point in the city. So did you look at that one? And then the other one I'm curious about, knowing full well that it's probably a joint project with the city of Issaquah, is the other choke point is Issaquah Fall City, or Issaquah Pine Lake Road going out to Issaquah Fall City Road, where we own the property there to the corner, and so it, from the light of the city limit, and then Issaquah has obviously done that huge project and widened a portion of the road, but then how about the rest of it? So that's those two for sure on the south end concern me immensely as to why they're not on this to be done in the next 6 years. And then I would add that I don't know why still to this day we're not looking at 244th and the fact that that is a roadway that needs, that's again another choke point to get out to 202. So are we looking at that, and why wouldn't it be on the 6-year tip? And is it because it's not on our TMP? Sorry, now I've got like 6 questions for you already. So
You can start, and I can add on.
Sure. Issaquah Pine Lake Road corridor study is in the 6-year plan. So that would be the piece that we would need to define the functionality of that corridor. We have had preliminary conversations with City of Issaquah to potentially partner, or maybe we can look at extending that corridor study and partner with them and look at how that road would connect with Issaquah. So we are looking at that. Those corridor studies are crucial for staff so that we can then figure out kind of smaller bite-sized projects from after the completion of the corridor study so we can implement some new infrastructure.
is there a way to do it without the corridor study?
It's extremely challenging. The other benefit of a corridor study is that it's a great opportunity for funding in the future if we have a plan for that roadway. Our funding partners really look to that to have that plan, as well as when development comes in, if we don't have a designated width of the road and what types of infrastructure we want to see, the default is to our standards, which are great. However, that might not be what is the most useful for that road. And feel free to add. Andrew's been working quite a bit with Issaquah.
Yeah, of course. No, that was exactly what I was thinking for that one. And then for the 228th choke point, we have talked about, as part of that potential sidewalk and bike lane improvements in that area, also doing additional modeling in that area to confirm whether or not additional capacity improvements are needed, because we don't want to put in sidewalks and bike lanes and then there be need for capacity later. So that is something we would do before and as part of moving that project forward.
And how much of the study from the, well, never mind. Okay, so Mayor, just a question here for you is, how, do you all, we're going to discuss this kind of stuff, but if I'm looking at this as far as what the budget is, and if this is driving our 2-year to 6-year budget, then there's definitely, I'm looking at some projects that don't need to be on this plan. And I would definitely caution about, so I don't know if I should make those kind of comments now and give a list of, you know, here's the programs or roadways that I'd like to be removed from this plan.
I think just, of course, council can suggest whatever they want during their time. I think just for clarity for staff, if we all just get through our questions and clarifications first and then come back around and make our suggested proposals for additions or removal, then we can run a cleaner process on if there is 4 votes total in 4 council members total in support of going one way or another for a
Thank
direction.
You. All right. I have no more questions.
Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this is a question for Mr. City Manager and the directors, and thanks for going first, you guys, because I think the question I'll have is the same for all of these. So we're looking at, you know, all these line items, you know, if you look at everyone, hundreds, right? So I guess, Mr. City Manager, are we trying to do line item analysis and weigh in on each one of these independently? Because if in a study session, I'm thinking, okay, we're getting this information, but if this is us giving our direction on individual items, because we might like some, we might not like others, that's quite a task for this evening. And I think that also means moving things off of the list and possibly replacing them with things that are from the unconstrained capital list, because there was a recommendation of what goes on there. And also, there's a priority to this, right? You guys set up a priority. But I'm curious then, that might change with what happens with different funding sources, such as REIT and impact and fuel tax that may or may not show. So therefore, you're having to, you know, make some decisions. So I guess the question is, are we trying to, at this moment, go through all of hundreds of these and weigh in and analyze each on, off, modify, and bring from the other list? Because I'd be happy to email my list to all y'all. But the question is that our process for this evening that would be valuable to this, to what's being presented to us?
Thank you for the lengthy question. So let me see if I can do some bite-sized pieces of this. And I really do appreciate the question. So overall, when we've gone through the process of, to your point, Councilmember, we have prioritized based on, and this is the part I want to be really clear about, we have functional plans and scoring criteria that have been adopted by councils in the past that we are using to then prioritize what we're bringing forward. And that would include what revenue we might find available. I think what you heard from the team is some projects score better than others for some of the regional. And so part of this is we're trying to thread the needle, if you will, on what are the big projects, recognizing that we're never going to be able to fund them all. I want to be really clear about this. There's always going to be a list of projects that we're never going to be able to fund, and that's the way life goes. Same as with our individual, wherever we live or whatever our budget is, we're never going to get to everything. So we try to really be judicious and prioritize based on defined need, based on our functional plans. So this is what you're getting here tonight, is that work. In terms of going line by line, I think what we were trying to give you is the broader perspective and in looking at the programs and the bigger projects about how we got there so that you all can focus what I would say more on the policy side of that rather than the line by line component of it. Because again, if council, for instance, chose to say we want to, take a whole bunch of stuff off and do other things, I think we would then be asking you, well, we wouldn't necessarily know how to go and review and analyze and score those necessarily because we've already done that with what you have in front of you. So I think that's my short version of, and again, we can have more of this conversation, but I think broadly what we are looking for is feedback from council about our programs and projects, again, based on functional plans and criteria, and these are council adopted. So this is the piece, again, apologize for doubling up on this, but this is based on all of those, what our professional recommendations are for these CIPs. So
yeah, I could understand too that if I say take off a sidewalk and put in a culvert, oh my gosh, so you're into the minutia, and then this thing now is, it is now constrained, so it's financially funded on paper. You got to move things from general fund back and forth, so you'll pull it off. But doing that would mean that now we've got an active unbalance if I choose something like I don't like Fifth Street, but I like the signal move. It's like, oh, good Lord, I don't know how you're going to do that as we sit here. So I wanted to have some clarity. If we go through the list and say I don't like, I'm completely against storm pipe rehabilitation. There's a weird one, but I really love sidewalks. I'm gonna have a hard time going through many of these and then giving you useful feedback in that manner. So that's what's behind my question.
And Councilmember, if I may, I appreciate that clarification. And what I would say is, for all of our programs and everything else, we have, as you know, there are more projects down the list. And so what you're getting is what rose to the top, right? So in some measure, if you say, we don't want you to do the top project, we would then drop down the list and say, well, this is the next project that scored the next highest. Now, the challenge with that is the dollars may not add up, the timelines may not add up, and we would have to do some work on that. But if that's helpful in terms of if council wanted to say, don't do a particular project.
And we want that tonight.
I think overall we're looking for feedback, and the team can jump in about what we're looking for. But we are trying to. This is the first touch for council, and we're looking for you all to stay a little bit high level rather than down in the weeds, because the dollars themselves, that's when we get into the budget, and we're not there yet. And so we're trying to look for we're trying to build right now. This is the first step in many to get to what is the presented. Budget and proposed CIP when we get into the fall.
Thank you.
Deputy.
Really quick, if I may, just to add on to City Manager's comments, we do have two things. So once a project begins feasibility, there's usually an alternatives analysis. Quite often our bigger projects are brought forward to council. Sometimes there's some questions in terms of funding, or we have a few projects that are identified that are meeting some of our level of traffic stress goals that we identified in some of our functional plans, but we may consider alternatives. So those are good examples of where, yes, what you may see on paper, right, is more than likely the most expensive version, because that's what we need to plan for. But as the project progresses through the preliminary engineering and engineering phases, there's can be some opportunity there, although usually it doesn't get less expensive.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify. You mentioned impact fees were influencing, I forget which two projects it was, the last ones you were talking about. Do I understand that impact fees in Sammamish are not restricted to a particular area? They can be used. Isn't our entire city the definition of the sub area when it comes to impact fees? So we have flexibility on what projects we might choose to fund with that. So can you explain to me why you chose the two projects that you did? Because those aren't the projects I would have chosen.
And you are correct. We have one service area. It's the whole city for impact fees. Some of these we're doing due to timing, and I'll Andrew jump in here in terms of opportunity to continue 6th Street since we're constructing this year, as well as just looking at staff workload. These particular projects, you can see all the other projects and programs have a much lower amount that are TIF eligible. So all of the projects in that connection category are 100% TIF eligible.
Yeah, I think that was a large driver, was finding projects that are close to 100% eligible. that also had a lot of utility to them at the same time. So the 6th Street and 5th Street, we viewed those as those improvements are going to be made by developers. We wanted probably within the next 6 years, have the city complete their frontage as well for kind of safety and efficiency purposes. So those were kind of 2 clear ones, and those had been programmed previously, at least 6 had been. And then the Belvedere at Beaver Lake Drive, we thought that was a good one for emergency access and evacuation purposes. And then the other 2 are ones that we think are good, but would be potentially further out, just based on what's happening with Town Center in the next 6 years. We looked at some other projects as well. These were the ones that kind of we thought scored highest. There was one extending and completing Northeast 14th Street, where there's a gap between 228, 244th. Good project, probably more expensive. But we thought the usefulness of some of these projects were better than that, and some of the other small neighborhood collector type filling in the gap roadway projects we had come up with in the city. But if there's other ideas, I'm sure there's could have been something we missed. So, happy to hear other ideas for spending and utilizing TIF.
Yeah, maybe we can meet offline. I'd just like to look at what other projects could qualify that we passed on.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you for this. I'm wondering if what might be helpful, especially for some of the new council members, would be to share the scoring rubric and the full list of projects that you evaluated with the scoring so that they can understand that there is a very detailed method to your madness. And then also, just to clarify that while geographically there are no restrictions on what is TIF eligible, there are lots of other criteria. So we cannot apply TIF dollars willy-nilly to any project, right? So there are lots of criteria, and as they showed you in that other chart, there are some projects that are not TIF eligible at all, so nothing can be applied to them. On that note, one question I have is, do we have any TIF funds that will be expiring in the next 6 years?
Do you have?
Yes, it's kind of like a, Mike. Yes, thank you. It's kind of like every year there's a good amount expiring. I'd say for this CIP period, it's a little bit weighted towards the front end of the CIP, those expiring funds, but it's pretty, every year we have.
Right. So I think one thing that would be really helpful is to show what TIF funds might be expiring in what year, because while people may not love a particular project, I don't love giving money back. So we should consider that if we have TIF funds and we don't have other TIF eligible projects that are, scored higher, we shouldn't necessarily pass those by, especially for doing some of the planning work, at least in my humble opinion. The other question I have is, how many projects do we have that are shovel ready from a transportation perspective? And just for my fellow council members, while you guys, I'll cover for you for a minute while you think. The reason that's important is because most of our grants that we get, if they're not planning grants, most of the grants we're able to get are going to be on shovel-ready projects. So just like when you presented the stormwater, you talked about having this cadence of doing planning and construction so that you always have these projects that have a plan, so we're better equipped to get some of those grants.
All of ours that are shovel ready are going to construction in the next month or two. So
okay, so we don't have any others after, like they'll either be in construction or they're in an earlier stage of planning.
Right.
So that would be another thing I would look for is, are there some projects that we can get to shovel ready so that we can always be on the hunt for grants? Because again, we like free money.
We love it, yes.
Yeah.
And we would love to have for our corridors, those to reach a 30% design threshold is a really good threshold to aim for in terms of we really know what the road will look like. And that's a great threshold for our funding partners as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you happen to know when was the last time we won a grant for a safety or a congestion project?
No, I think our last transportation grant was for the overlays on 228th, which is a rehabilitation preservation project.
Okay. And do you have a sense of what types of projects are getting grant funding currently? So that, again, we can look at that as part of our prioritization that says, hey, these projects are out of favor now, but these projects are more likely to get funding. That may be, maybe not, but it could be a factor.
Absolutely. Andrew, do you want to weigh in a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we're routinely monitoring grants with Puget Sound Regional Council and WSDOT and looking at, they typically, for both those agencies, they have to be projects that are in the CIP. So we're, always attending meetings on the different programs out there. And I think another challenge is they want you to be far enough along in the design process that what you're proposing seems to be realistic with the cost estimate. So I think that's, to the earlier question, something that's challenging is if we're not at a 30% design, we can't give a reasonable cost estimate. I know that's a big criteria WSDOT looks at, and you'll get kind of pinged later on if they've worked with you and found that to be the process, could hurt future applications.
Absolutely. And then you had one comment in there about the Southeast Corridor. And if possible, we would align it with the bioretention project. I'd like to really encourage us to not say if possible, but to say we are going to align these, right? And I think, again, over and over of Thompson Hill Road, right? If we're going to have to go and do work, we just get so much efficiency when we can combine those projects, and we only inconvenience people once. Yeah. I'm sure I'm out of time. All right, I have more, but next round.
We can come back. All right, up next we have Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question or query about on one of your slides. You had referred to inventory updates, like an asset management. Can you just speak a little bit about that?
Sure. We do have inventory. We currently just updated our GIS inventory as part of the pavement condition program or plan, excuse me. So when the trucks were driving around scanning the conditions of the road, they were able to scan all the right-of-way assets, and those are being put into their various GIS layers, which is incredibly helpful for both operations and all of our inspection programs, as well as capital planning. At some point, once we move into asset management, you can apply prediction curves to those assets based on their operational score, their structural score, when they were installed, sometimes for pipes, what soils are around them, and different things like that. That helps us predict, especially rehabilitation projects, much longer into the future.
Okay, so it's asset management in terms of like our roads and managing that particular asset. Is that what you mean?
Everything, roads, sidewalks, storm pipes. So we've done some preliminary work. So now ahead of an overlay, we camera the storm pipes 1 to 2 years in advance. They're not always perfect under the road. So 223rd is slated for an overlay this summer. For an example, our crews were able to repair the 2 culverts, stormwater culverts pipes in advance of that road work being done.
Okay, and then just very quickly, in order for a project to get on the CIP, it has to go through our scoring. We don't just pick random things and say, oh, this would be nice. So I saw that road when I was driving into work, let's add that. It has to go through a scoring process, which we put in place maybe 2 years ago. And so if it meets those criteria, it goes in the 6th year, and then some of them go further on down the list that don't have funding associated with them, and they kind of sit there whenever the timing is right.
Correct. Yeah, that's part of the very initial scoring process to see if they even make it onto the 6-year list. There's other things that we look at, for example, maybe the 24th Street bioretention stormwater project. It happened to score well, but if it didn't, and we were doing a transportation project at the same time, we'd pick up that project because we're right there, and that makes sense to dig up that road once.
Councilmember Lamb.
For the pavement management program, are we going to be getting the analysis back on the PCI? I know we had talked about decreasing the index to be in line with our neighboring cities, and that's a possible way to save money.
Yes, so two things. Yes, you'll be seeing that back. That plan is currently paused briefly as we gain staff capacity. We did receive the initial data back. It's being QA/QC'd, but our average network PCI is about 84.25 or somewhere in there. So it's very excellent. And with that analysis, as that comes back in the fall, it'll help inform both the street fund, which currently funds our preservation projects for pavements or overlays, crack seals, or some other tools and techniques we'd like to use in Sammamish, slurry seals and micro seals. And then if the road degrades far enough, that funding source transfers into the 340 due to the complexity of the work. And now we're looking at stormwater impacts as well, usually. So that PCI decision point would affect both of those programs as well as our operations. But that is all coming back in the fall.
Okay, so that's like a future budget opportunity.
Yes.
How much are we getting for the PSRC TAP grant?
The estimated cost to finish the corridor study, I believe, was around $250,000. And I'm probably going to confuse the percent of how much we would get between the WASDOT and the PSRC, but both were around, one was 80%, one was 80 something else percent. So it's a pretty substantial contribution where we would just have a match of, I think it was 87% for the PSRC one, so a 13% match, and then the WASDOT, I think, was 80-20. Yeah.
How much was that in dollars? Sorry.
So, gotta do math.
I don't know, like over 100,000.
So it would be in the low 30,000s.
Okay,
Yeah.
not much. We don't often go after PSRC grants. They have a significant, amount of money. And is the reason we don't go after, is it because we aren't a regional growth center and they tend to prioritize regional growth centers for that $300 million that they give out?
That's a great question. So part of the reason we went for that particular project for that grant is 30% of the evaluation criteria was, does your project connect to like a large mixed use center? And so we're not one of the regional ones, but Town Center is the largest center we have. So that is part of the challenge for going after those grants, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so Sammamish does have a challenge going after PSRC grants.
Each program has slightly different criteria, but yes, depending on the criteria. For example, safety, we don't have as many crashes as communities where you maybe have an arterial with tons of turn lanes and a ton of commercial and driveways through there. So yeah, depending on the program, we are often less competitive.
Okay. And just one other question for the 228th transportation gap, that's Southeast 33rd Court to city limits. Would we be doing that if the new high school wasn't being built?
It is, a lot of the focus of the bike ped plan was identifying the gaps along arterials and collectors where there's no facilities present at all. So I think access to schools was one of 10 criteria in there. This was the highest scoring project. I think it would still be towards the top, if not the top. I don't know for sure off the top of my head, though, if school was taken out of that evaluation criteria.
Okay, because, it seems to me that if it was related to the new high school, that the ISD should be paying for this because it is an impact. Would that be correct? They're putting a new high school in, and then we're going to be adding sidewalks, and they're not paying for it.
This section of 228th and Southeast 43rd was one of the top ranked projects in the bike and pedestrian mobility plan in terms of adding active transportation and access to that stretch of the corridor. I believe one of the sections identified in that plan, actually, the school district is building because of their frontage improvements. So this is filling in the gap between 33rd and city limits, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So they can't pay. So this is just the section that no one's responsible for. So therefore we're responsible for it.
It's within our right-of-way. Should an adjacent property owner develop, for example, they would be required to put the frontage in, but this is our principal arterial, so most cities will do improvements for the most part on their principal arterial.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've got a couple questions here. So the Sahalee Way corridor study, what's the minimum amount that should be completed? I think we're at 10% now. How far are we along in that?
The corridor study has most of the work completed already in terms of the outreach with the community, the engineering analysis. It would just be bringing the final, kind of the draft and final plans back for council review and hopefully adoption. And then we progress with a phasing plan and can start design work on some of the phases.
Okay, so how far out would we be on being able to put that roundabout there at Northeast 28th? You can do it now, but it's not ideal. How far out if we wait for ideal?
I would need to take a look at the other project. The project manager for that is wrapping up Lewis Thompson and a project manager for George Davis. So capacity-wise, I think we could pick up the corridor study again, towards the end of the summer as we complete construction on both of those projects. I think probably 6 months out from wrapping that corridor study up and then being able to start design immediately.
So if I'm looking at this correctly, we would be done with the roundabout on 228th and 28th by 2029? Is that?
Design construction,
without
yes.
moving it forward?
Without?
One of your options here is to move it forward. It's a midterm. It looked like it, I thought I read on here that, or heard you say that we could move the roundabout forward before the entire corridor study was complete. Is that?
That was one area that we could advance either in parallel with finishing the corridor study, which we would recommend completing the corridor study. That particular intersection, we don't anticipate the geometry of that changing that much, regardless of the alternative chosen for the corridor study or the phasing.
On your list was the part of Sahalee Way, the seepage project, the stormwater, I think it's 613. Is part of the corridor study extending that? There's a right-hand turn lane that goes into the, you know what I'm talking about, as you head up the hill. Is part of the corridor study increasing that 2 lanes all the way up to, I think it's Northeast 11, it is Northeast 11th Place. Is that part of the planning process for Sahalee Way?
Sahalee Way looks at 8th all the way up to our city limits. We did study the corridor all the way up through to, 202, but the study itself ends at city limits. The drainage project that you're referring to, I believe on the stormwater side, there's groundwater seepage happening.
The Boys and Girls Club?
Right at the Boys and Girls Club. So that's a groundwater issue. So Matt has that project in his queue.
So my question on that one is there a part of the Sahalee Way study taking that 2 lane that drops into 1 lane that ends up being a bottleneck, I believe, because people end up pulling over into the left-hand lane before they have to, before they cross Inglewood Hill Road? Is part of that study to take that 2 lanes all the way up the hill so that people don't start getting over ahead of time? It is.
We're happy to sit down with you anytime too and walk through all of the alternatives presented too.
Okay, so one of my questions is, as part of that stormwater process, that's a big project, can that road change be put together with that process?
Combined with that process.
And so could we theoretically pull that project forward as well?
If the timing works out, absolutely. If it does not, we would need to advance that drainage repair essentially for that seepage.
Okay.
Which it's a pretty small footprint. Usually those are, a few feet wide, and I'm guessing a trench will go under the roadway, and so it's not.
It hit the big category, but relative to a road project, it's not that big.
Small.
Yes. Okay, was Sammamish Highlands for dealing with the traffic cut-throughs on your analysis for this tip or not?
No.
Okay. What does it take to add that in as like a midterm look, since the high school's going in, and that's one of the questions we have from residents is cut-through traffic? I don't need an answer now, I'm just raising it.
Sure.
And then my next one is there anything, the funding that you're using between REIT and TIF, is there anything related to how we're doing that would preclude us from passing a councilmanic bond to pull forward project capacity sooner and then pay off that bond? TIF might be something that's challenging to pay off a bond with, but REIT is more of a stable But can we use those two, or one or the other, to pay off a councilmanic bond so we can pull projects forward? As I'm thinking about interest that we pay versus cost of labor and materials, moving those projects forward seems like a better use of our money and paying interest than paying higher cost of labor and materials. My time's up, but you're able to.
Those are great questions. I'm not able to answer. I will get back to you. Those are good questions.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. Do you incorporate Vision Zero, or did we incorporate Vision Zero as part of our criteria? Because I know that that's a really important, and I don't know if you want to give a quick explanation of what Vision Zero is for everyone.
Sure. I'm happy to, go ahead.
Oh, no. Either way's fine. Vision Zero is the aim to bring traffic-related fatalities down to zero, and communities typically will set a horizon goal year with which they reach to accomplish that, and then kind of track it over time, their progress, typically tied to like a safety action plan. We have looked at accidents in a variety of different ways in project selection and development. That was one of the criteria in the bike ped plan for ranking and evaluating projects. When I've been looking for that transit access enhancement program, that's something I've looked at for prioritizing crosswalks and bus stop improvements. So it has been in kind of a variety of our plans, in the TMP as well. That was a whole section in there. So it's kind of, given we don't have tons of traffic incidents compared to other communities, we've tried to just incorporate it throughout all of our different programs and evaluation criteria.
Excellent. And then as we look at priorities, it occurred to me that things like the school access, like I love that you're combining some of those programs, but the school access program and some of the ADA barrier removal stuff, a lot of those, it looks like, those are synergies where we could say, hey, if we do this, it checks off both boxes, if you will. I mean, not to diminish it to that, but this would, maybe it's a number 3 priority on both lists, but because it does both, that may raise it up in terms of a priority. So I just don't know if we've looked at some of those types of things, because again, access to transit and to our schools, to me, seems like a really important part of that ADA barrier removal, right? To make moving around more accessible to everyone. And then my last question is, we've had discussions previously about lowering speed limits. Are those capital projects or not really? Because we're not really building something, so I didn't know if that belonged here or somewhere else.
We will, there is funding in the speed and safety management program. With that type of a program, you can look at studies or different things that would then set guidance for infrastructure improvements. So we're always looking at speed and assessing, our traffic engineers are. That's something a lot of times would require either striping or some minor modifications that could be completed either through operations or through this capital program.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we keep that on deck, because we know that can have a lot of positive effects beyond that. So I think that is all my questions. And again, I'll just reiterate, I think it would be helpful if we could get the whole list and the scoring rubric so people have that breadth of understanding before we start trying to move all your puzzle pieces around. Thanks.
Thank you. Really quickly, if I might add as well, we do have, of course, all of the data details, all the numbers will be incorporated into the citywide CIP. We do have a guide that will complement the citywide CIP for all the transportation and stormwater projects. In addition to all the funding amounts and their resources or sources, it'll also spell out what comprehensive goal and everything that they will be accomplishing and their scores.
Councilmember Treen.
Quick question. Who oversees the construction, whether it's stormwater or transportation related?
Depends on the project. So often we bring in, for big projects, we bring in third-party construction management firms to assist. We have one very talented capital project inspector, but the project managers of the city oversee construction phase.
So we outsource it for the most part?
Some, depends on the size of the project. So our overlays, for example, for the most part, we'll inspect those in-house. We send materials testing out, outside, and we don't test our own materials. Depends on, we've had some smaller stormwater projects that our project managers will do the inspections along with our in-house inspectors. George Davis, we've brought on a full team of inspectors.
I got
managers.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Because I got time limit, because that leads. So, but like, for example, Shore Lane, and you were to put that onto the tip and actually build that and construct it, who would oversee that kind of a project where it's actually constructing a roadway?
Either our city project manager or inspections, depending on workload, we might bring in third party as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Council, any other questions? Okay, I don't see any, so I'll likely wrap up here. I want to clarify the bond question I was asking was related to the program list that you had pulled up and not necessarily for other big projects, which would be a separate question. So the sidewalk gaps, those sorts of things is what I'm referring to. It's about $1 million it looks like we spend. Also not the pavement management program. So just those smaller projects that are impactful is what I was asking about.
Thank you.
Okay, I still don't see any other lights on, so I think we are good to move forward.
Okay, well, thank you.
Or you are all done. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have additional questions, we're also happy to meet anytime with you or anyone in the community as well, but thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. All right, we'll now move on to our Parks 6-year capital plan.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks and Recreation. And your next presentation is the draft Parks Capital Improvement Plan, which we will refer to as CIP through this presentation, and that runs for the years 2027 through 2032. I'm joined by Michelle Arab, Parks Project Manager for this presentation, and Andrew Roddy, our Facilities Project Manager, is here, and he will present, after this, he will present the General Government CIP, which is for facilities. I will just share that the work we are bringing you tonight has been run by our Parks Commission. We've had a couple of meetings with our Parks and Recreation Commission, and these recommendations are supported by our commission. With that, I'll turn it over to Michelle.
So good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members, and City Manager. I'm Michelle Arab, Parks Project Manager. Oops. Oh, here. Okay. I'm not used to using the clicker. Tonight we will review the Parks CIP with revenue sources and project categories. We'll discuss those priorities, and we'll look at a draft of the Parks CIP and discuss next steps. So what is the Parks Capital Improvement Plan? It's a 6-year planning tool. It guides the development and acquisition of parks and recreation facilities. It has at a very planning level of cost estimates and timeframes, and it's not an official budget document. The types of projects that are included are master plans, design and construction, land acquisition, and park system development. So in our updates, we definitely prioritized maintenance projects, and we've had numerous conversations with our parks maintenance staff as well as recreation, and as Anjali mentioned, we met with the Parks and Recreation Commission twice. Our revenue sources, we get about $3 million a year from real estate excise tax. Park impact fees are around $225,000 a year. And then we also have King County Parks levy funding, which is around $650,000 per year for the next 6 years. In our 2024 PROS plan, the community prioritized future park improvements, and number 1 was maintenance of existing facilities. 2 was connecting trails, and then 3, improve and upgrade existing city parks. And 4th, develop new parks on currently owned undeveloped sites. So this is really important feedback that we've received from the community, and it very much aligns with what we've heard from the Parks and Rec Commission. Number 1 in their priorities was safety and maintenance of existing parks and infrastructure. There were a number of projects that they had broad support for, many of those being maintenance projects as well. Some of their concerns were about advancing too many large projects at the same time, and there was interest in phasing or simplifying larger capital projects. So this is an overview of the park CIP. We will not be going over it line by line, but this was helpful for us in developing what our priorities are, thinking about where those projects may land over the next 6 years. And I have highlighted with a darker box the 27, 28 years, because that will be the upcoming budget. Internally, we came up with 3 categories. So we wanted to think about critical projects, which are those projects that really focus on maintenance. We have other capital projects, which are some of our larger planning projects, and then a general category for park-wide kinds of projects. And so we are now going to look at each of those categories. And in particular, I'm going to focus on the projects that are upcoming for the 27-28 budget cycle. So one of our top staff priorities is the East Lake High School turf replacement. This is an end of life cycle type of project. We have started GMAX testing last year. We're going to continue to do that testing this year. We're looking to see when it starts to fail the test, and then we'll know it's time to move that project forward. But this is one of our very well-used facilities. Another top staff priority was Pine Lake Park. This is a very well-used park. And as we started talking about some of those priorities, there were a number of them that came up. And so we want to look at them kind of holistically. While each one is an individual item, we want to recognize that they're all taking place in Pine Lake Park and try to address them at the same time for efficiencies and to close the park hopefully one time. So within that, definitely deck replacement and parking lot resurfacing. There is also the addition of a ADA compliant restroom and shower. It would have an outdoor shower. And attached to that is the barrier removal to the restroom, and then playground improvements. So all combined, it's a little under $3 million. Another top priority are playground equipment and updates. Many of our playgrounds may not look like they're 20 to 30 years old, but many of them are. And so our staff is doing a good job in terms of maintaining them, but it's getting more and more difficult to find replacement parts when you have equipment that's that old. So we're looking at phasing those kinds of updates throughout the next 6 years. And then we also have some other critical projects, including capital replacement plan. That's kind of a general fund that we can address some smaller projects. There's the Southeast 32nd Trail Street improvements at Klahani Park, bulkhead repair and hardening at Sammamish Landing, and parking lot resurfacing projects. In terms of our other capital projects, these are, as I mentioned, some of our larger planning projects. And one that is ongoing is the Evans Creek Preserve Trails. So in the next couple of years, completing that connection into Evans Creek Preserve from the loop trail that was constructed this past year. And Beaver Lake Park athletic field improvements was one internally that came up often and is a real top priority. In particular, our maintenance staff brought this up. This is one project where these improvements would reduce maintenance. So rather than adding a new project, it's reducing the maintenance that they're conducting. This is a very popular park. Again, these are very well-used fields. These are fields that are 30 years old or more. The irrigation hasn't been updated, nor have the fields. So the master plan was done for Beaver Lake Park in 2010, and there was a feasibility study in 2022. At that time, these three options were reviewed, as well as the Inglewood Middle School athletic field options. During that council meeting, option 2 from Beaver Lake Park was selected of these three, but the decision was also made to move forward with Inglewood Middle School. And as you know, that has been completed. And so this project was kind of put to the side, and as I mentioned, it just kept coming back up within our own internal conversations. So not only in terms of maintenance and doing some of these improvements to reduce the maintenance required, if in option, as you'll see in option 2, there is a multi-use field and it's synthetic turf with lights, we suddenly have the option of more use throughout the year and more revenue that's associated with it. So that option 2 is the most expensive of the options, and it is the one that we're holding within our budget currently because that was the one that was selected. Big Rock Park South, Phase 1 improvements. This project is currently on hold. There is market analysis being done on this project, and we understand that the analysis may come back and certain decisions are made that are different than what is reflected currently. We are showing some budget in the next budget cycle to move that project forward. And again, we are holding the costs for the full project, but again, recognizing that that may change when we have more information. So Beaton Hill Park soft opening. Beaton Hill Park was, there was a master plan done for that at the same time as Big Rock Park South. This is a project just north of the Big Rock Park North parcel. And it is not one of our higher priorities for the larger planning projects. However, so in our proposed draft CIP, we are showing that in the outer years. But we think there's a lot of potential with this site. And so we want to find some ways to maybe open up more of the site and allow the public to use it while waiting for the construction of the master plan in later years. And finally, we do want to hold some budget for a connection from Lower Sammamish Commons to Big Rock Park. This is an important connection, and it's one that we have been working on for many years and hope to continue to find a way to make that connection. So our last category is general. And in this, we have things like land acquisition, parks barrier removal, wayfinding. These are different kinds of items that can apply to many different parks or to the system as a whole. And then this is an overview of what those costs would be per year. This is not a perfect, well-aligned budget at the moment. You can see that we are overspending what we expect to receive. But again, this was just our draft and a place to start the conversation with you and hear your feedback. And I did want to note that right now our fund balance is around $32 million. So right now, in terms of next steps, we are planning to engage with the Parks and Recreation Commission next month. And then the recommended park CIP will inform the development of the draft biennial budget for the city manager review and council consideration. So with that, I open it up for any questions.
All right, we'll kick it off with Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, guys. Just to make sure these numbers are adding up. So on here, you had, what is it? Sorry, I'm managing multiple screens and pieces of paper. Sorry. 69 million there, but in our summary, in our packet, it was 58 million. So is that, what's that delta from?
When you say packet, can you tell me which?
Our council
exhibit?
packet, and
Right.
there was a summary in there.
It's possible that we were going back and forth on the numbers for Beaver Lake Park. They're really big numbers. We might have taken a lower number. So
Yeah, this one is bigger because you add it all up, and to get a constraint is 181 million, and this would bring it over that. So I was just wondering if that's what happened, and also when you have, when we say that the Beaver Lake Park option 2 was selected, that was selected by the commission?
by the council. So what happened is
By this council?
no, by a council
Prior
in
council?
2022.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. And so, but you're putting in, would you say you're putting in worst case?
Mhm.
Yes,
So that,
being very conservative.
Yeah, very good. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you guys for your presentation. On slide 6, and it's in our packet too, you talk about feedback that we received from the public. How was that feedback gathered? Was that like at farmers markets and things like that, is that how we gathered that feedback?
The feedback that we are showing you here is from our 2024 PROS plan, Parks, Recreation and Open Space Plan. So there's a wide range. We had a statistically valid survey. We had just the informal survey that we have up on our website. We had a series of public meetings, some focus groups, and then, yes, we had some tabling events at farmers markets and our parks events.
Okay, great. And I'm just looking at the Pine Lake capital improvements like the playground equipment. And I was just curious because as in my own neighborhood, we're kind of going through a microcosm of that. Our playground equipment is also 23 years old, and we're looking at we need to replace it. And the price of replacing it is quite shocking. And the one thing that I think about is the age of the children in the area that are actually going to use this equipment, and is the playground equipment that we're going to install appropriate? So when we're looking at replacing that playground structure, do we just replace it like for like? Because that's what's there now, so that's what we're going to, it's for 2 to 5 year olds, and then that's what we're going to replace it with? Or do we look at the demographics of our city and say, you know what, that population is actually dwindling, and what we're seeing using this park right now are 5 to 12 year olds, and we need to put in a structure for that age group? Do we do that?
Yeah, that is a really good question. Right now, we're still showing, as compared to other cities, a high number of residents are under the age of 18,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, growing. I will say that it's pretty typical to provide play equipment. There's a lot of playground safety that goes in. We have playground safety inspectors on our parks maintenance team, and they generally are categorized into those 2 age groups you just mentioned, 2 to 5, 5 to 12. I doubt that we'll move away from that, though trends in playgrounds constantly change. And we will have the opportunity to revisit what the current trends are. The same thing with swing sets. And then More recently, there's also universal play, and there's trying to be more inclusive in our play equipment. So all of that will be looked at. And we cannot also just cherry pick a manufacturer, so that we always have some form of a public process to be able to narrow down our options.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I will add at Pine Lake, there are 2 sets of play equipment, and they cater to those 2 different age groups.
Okay, thank you. Mary, do I have time for one more question? And because it's mentioned throughout, staff priority, when it comes to putting items on the Parks CIP, are we using a rubric to score these just like we do with Public Works, or is it just feedback from the Commission, things that the maintenance staff are seeing? Is that more the way that we're deciding what goes on the CIP?
In the case of parks, it is our PROS plan. That is our guiding document, and then the priorities that it established. So when we did the PROS plan in 2018, we heard a lot from the community that you need to buy more land. And so that was a very high priority, and then there were, obviously many other priorities. When we went out in 24, we had the pandemic had hit. People's priorities had changed. We were concerned about the costs of some of these projects. And so this document that gathers information from the community, by doing an inventory of our parks and understanding the condition, talking to our maintenance folks, staff, planning staff, Parks Commission, and Council. So this becomes our guide. And this time around in 24, what we heard is, first maintain what you have, then improve your current parks before you go and add to improving new parks or adding to the system. So we don't go beyond that and have any scoring rubric. That becomes our guiding document. That said, even within those priorities, from time to time, things change. And so we do spend a considerable amount of time checking back with our maintenance folks of if priorities have changed for them, and if certain projects are taking up more time or they're spending more time repairing. They're struggling finding replacement parts on some of our older.
Yeah, and it's just an observation. I just wonder, is it worth, because we have a budget of 32 million, is it worth it looking at the project? 'Cause some of those projects are astronomically priced, right? Is it worth looking at some of the smaller ones that we could totally do, like the connection to Big Rock Park, and those smaller projects that are costing less money, we could do them and move on, and then save for those bigger ones. I just wonder about prioritizing it like that too.
Can I respond to that?
For sure, yes.
Okay. And that is how we've tackled it, and you have your critical projects. One thing to keep in mind is some of these larger projects, they take years, so you can do them in parallel. So one of the other pieces of work that we do is we go in and we actually color code this and say we have about 2 project managers, and how much can the staff resources handle, and then we balance out some of these smaller projects with some of the larger projects that a consultant is working on, and you're just helping them move along. And it takes about, like if Big Rock South was to be built in the scope that we presented to Council, I believe we were going to open it in 2031. So it takes a while.
Council, Deputy Mayor, but first, if the council gets their question out before their time's expired, I'm not cutting you off on it, giving the answer to us. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. Well, first of all, I kind of was going along the same lines as Councilmember O'Farrell. One of the things I noticed in your work, you do have a lot of smaller projects that will be appreciated by the public with having new equipment and well-maintained existing equipment, so that's great. And I want to thank the Parks Commission also for the work that they've done on this, because they kept us informed all along, so that was great too. I'm looking at page 21 where you summarize, and in by the end of 29, we have spent all our fund balance plus another $5 million from somewhere. And so that speaks back to the comment that Councilmember O'Farrell said. How can we spread this out? And what is this? Is this assuming we're going to have an MPD and there'll be new sources of funding coming to the city, or how are we funding this?
Did you want to go to this, the larger project slide, which actually shows the two biggest projects?
Sure. Oops.
Need Amber to get you back into.
No,
it is, but we came out of the next, not
Sorry.
critical, but right. So just want to draw your attention to two projects here: the athletic field improvements at Beaver Lake Park and Big Rock South. And so with Beaver Lake Park, what had happened is. We had brought Inglewood Schools improvements, athletic field improvements to council, and council was wanting to be sure that it was a good use of taxpayer dollars to continue this partnership and put money into a school site as opposed to a city-owned park site. And so the exercise we did was to look at some options at Inglewood Middle School and Beaver Lake Park and see the number of additional play hours we would get. And because Inglewood was just grass fields, we were able to add many more playable hours there. So then council stuck with the priority, because I think that project had been on our park CIP since, I want to say many years, maybe 2010 or even earlier. So we finished that project, and the goal was always to come back to Beaver Lake. But we could, and at the time we did that same, how many more hours do you get for the dollar spent? And they actually did an exercise to say what is the cost per hour of the improvements. And so Beaver Lake was really high. But the best option was that master plan option. Now we can improve that park any which way we want. What I would recommend is, if there is traction to move forward with this project, we should probably have the consultant come back and actually just fine-tune what is the best path forward, spend some time in the fall and present that to council and actually trim down the dollars. We are holding $25 million just for this one project. And we could do anything from the range of what we are doing at East Sammamish Park, which might end up being the $4 million range of just do the infields, don't build that fourth field, but then you lose the opportunity of adding a fourth soccer field. So I just think some pros and cons to be weighed, and then you would, if you chose the option of what we are doing at East Sammamish Park, you'd probably save $20 million right here. And then that would more than balance your budget. Now, the same with Big Rock South. We sense some hesitation on doing the entire scope of phase one that we brought to you. So based on what you find out from the market analysis, you may decide to do less. Note that because the years are shifting out, 17 million became almost 20 million. Mm-hmm. And so that is another project. Once we decide the scope, if we move forward, you would bring that number down. You might actually have money left at the end of 6 years.
I wonder if Mayor Amato's idea of borrowing the money until we have a grant to pay it, if there is grant money to support this. I don't know what kind of grant money is possible for parks, but I know there's a regional open space project going on at PSRC, so maybe they'll be coming up with some additional funding for cities to improve their parks.
Councilmember Lamb.
For the land acquisition, that's for the second MOC, is that correct?
This is the parks capital improvement plan. So no, that money is just a, this is again, a previous council had allocated $13 million to spend on land acquisition, and $4.3 million is what is left in that fund. And so it can be used for land acquisition only for parks.
Okay. So if I recall correctly in the pros plan, we weren't going to do any land acquisitions for like 6 years. So could that money just be moved somewhere else for another capital project?
It could definitely be moved to another capital project.
I guess if I just look at all the projects, I wouldn't mind delaying the Beaton Hill project because that is a new park, and if our priority is to maintain our existing parks, I would rather spend that $500,000 on an open park, a park that's already open. I was looking at the summary CIP, and it looked like it looked like $15 million will be moved from our general fund in 2030 and 2031. It's not reflected here, and I guess I'm wondering how those transfers happen and why. Because if I looked also in these 6 years, $14 million were from prior transfers from the general fund to parks. So the question is, why do those transfers happen?
From time to time, there are general funds that are moved to parks. One specific project that I can name is our Community and Aquatic Center. And when we built that, I know there was an amount, and that number is roughly what was likely moved from our general fund to the parks CIP for that project. In addition to other impact fee, park impact fee, and REIT dollars, because that was a $33 million project, and $5 million came from the YMCA.
So it couldn't stay in the general fund?
Councilmember Lamb, if I may, are you looking at a general fund contribution out to capital?
The chart wasn't clear. I was looking at the summary CIP, and it showed all of parks, and it showed $14 million going from, it said prior years, $14 million going to parks from the general fund, and then in 2030 and 2031, it was $15 million being transferred to parks.
I'm guessing that you are looking at the CIP that's online that finance puts together, or is it the specific agenda bill? Because we didn't put that information in the agenda bill.
What it is a city document. It just says summary on it. Maybe it's the same one that Councilmember Boyer looked at as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Councilmember, I appreciate that. We can follow up. I think what may be happening here is what you might be seeing is some of the transfers to the facilities CIP in part to do, and it got put in the wrong place perhaps. So we'll follow up on that and get back to you and clarify what's going on there. But we don't intend or hadn't planned on transferring general fund dollars into the park CIP, and so we'll make sure and get that cleared up.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you for this. I do like how you've laid out a lot of these projects. And I think I heard you say that, you haven't totally gone through and really looked realistically at how many projects you can really do a year. We love that you are like, we want to do all of these, but we know that staffing constraints and things, what's really realistic and how much of that smoothing will take care of some of these budget issues, because the land acquisition is also just right now parked as one lump sum in 2029, which is partially what's making that look bad. That may happen, like we don't really know when it's going to happen, but I do see like those big projects, a lot of projects landing all at once, and I'm not sure that we really ever been able to do quite that much. And so I'd love to see us, is that one of your next steps, I guess is my question, that you're going to really look and smooth it out a little bit?
We have taken a stab at it, so this is generally what we can accomplish, but we, as we get your feedback and move projects around, we will smooth it out, as you said. Yeah.
Councilmember Stewart, if I may, I think the other part about this is, particularly like the land acquisition, it is showing in the out years. So, to separate out the planning cycle from the funding cycle, if you will. And so showing that money not being in the funding cycle right now to reflect what's in the current PROS plan direction. And obviously that's we could run it all the way out and not show any dollars being spent. I think it was just a reflection of the fact that those dollars are there and council might want to access those. So some of that is just a reflection of that there are dollars available. And we can talk through when we get a little farther along about what years things go in the out years in particular, and that also gets to smoothing some of the dollar amounts in particular about how much fund balance you may or may not use depending on what projects move forward in those out years. So again, that 4-year post-biennial budget look is just to give an indication of where the team and the commission and the public think we should be spending those dollars, and then those are adjustable again as we move forward.
Okay, and then my other question is, I don't see the Building 120, and I know that it's a big question mark at the time, but it feels like there should be a placeholder on here for that. Yeah.
Hold for that for just a moment, and Andrew's here to speak to the general government CIP, which Building 120 falls into that category.
Okay, so it's not going to be in parks.
Correct.
Okay.
At the moment, yes.
And then I guess, is it your recommendation, since there's a good chance once we get information back from the market study and we start to make some decisions, that things like we may not do both Big Rock Park South Phase 1 altogether and Building 120. There will be some trade-offs there. Is it your recommendation that we keep these on here so that if the decision is to do these and there's an opportunity for grants, that it's all still here, right? Because again, they are in the outside of the current budget cycle that we're looking to budget for. And we can always shift those out. Is that your recommendation, that we just go ahead and leave them here so that no matter what decision is made, we're ready to apply for grants?
Yes, both to apply for grants, and projects start and stop as you saw this year. So we don't have an exact number of projects. There's always maybe one too many, so that if one is paused, we're able to shift gears and work on another project.
Okay.
So I will say that, but Building 120 does, will have some impact, and that remains to be seen. Right now, what you'll hear from when Andrew presents the facilities is we have some work to do on our Beaver Lake Lodge, and we don't want to do it without another option for the community to have a rentable space. So we are talking about trying to actually finish up Big Rock South in a timely manner if it comes back, that the barn is a good structure to renovate. And then we would have the barn ready, be able to move folks in there, and then shut down the lakeside of Beaver Lake Park. There's a number of things that we need to tackle. And we didn't go through that in a lot of detail here because you will see that the lakeside improvements are planned for that 2031, 2032. That's when you would hope that Big Rock South's renovations are complete.
Great. And then I guess I'm curious why Building 120 is in the general CIP and not parks, because all the other facilities like that tend to be in parks.
Thank you, Councilmember. It's a great question. And at the moment, it is in the general government CIP because it is not technically in a park. And so those types of facilities, particularly given the size and complexity of that facility, it is reflective of like City Hall and the MOC from that perspective. And so council could obviously choose to change that designation, but for right now, for planning purposes, it makes the most sense to hold it a little bit separate. And then in the future, if there's a change in that, then that's totally fine.
Cool, thank you.
All right, I've got some questions for you. One of the things that I care about, and I think it's kind of reflected in what was top of mind for residents in the 2024, although I don't know because it's kind of I can't remember what it said exactly. It really went based on what was in their mind when they answered the question about improve and upgrade existing parks, and what does that mean? So I don't know if we've got some verbatims from people on the survey or more details about what they said at different community events, but I would be interested in knowing what they mean by improve and upgrade. If they were talking about ball fields, in my mind, what comes comes into place is covering some of the locations we already have so they can be used more throughout the year. So, for example, the basketball court, covering the pickleball court, covering some of the play equipment so that we've got more time out of the year. Maybe adding some lights for winter time, not late into the night, but it gets dark at 4:30, right? And there's still plenty of playtime available. They just can't see anything in some of our parks. And I know we've got some dusk issues, but I'm wondering if that's part of some of these elements that you are looking at with the Parks Commission, or if those are not I know that's outside of the scope of the CIP conversation. We're just talking about broad money. But I'm asking because then do we need, if we want to develop a specific request for CIP funds to go to those sorts of elements within our parks?
Covering our basketball courts and pickleball didn't really come up or rise to a priority in the pros plan, and I can just say that it isn't currently in this plan. Lights brings another dimension. We would have to open up the master plan and do land use permits like CPAs and all of that, because I'll tell you that we don't have a single park with artificial turf and lights. After, we're 25 years old now, we manage that in schools. It's a little easier to do on school sites. So it's something we can look into if there is enough interest on council, and we would have to go back and look at specific sites. I'd say that for basketball, you do have some elementary schools have covered spaces that the community is able to use. Don't know how much access they have to gym buildings for unplanned use. So, yeah, we're happy to look into it if there is enough interest from council.
Yeah, okay. And then, so that kind of going into, it's more along the same line. So like at Beaver Lake Dog Park, there's no covered area for people to hang out during the day with a windbreak or anything. I've gone there. It's really cold during the winter, but my dogs don't care. And so I'm curious if, again, it sounds like that's not there. So what I'm getting to is, I'm not going to ask if there's consensus tonight, but on adding things like that, because we've got a lot of work to do here. But that is something I'm interested in learning more about, and the capability of us being able to do some of those things. The Pine Lake Park, the shutdown you mentioned, is that a winter shutdown or a summer? Are we losing a season in Pine Lake Park with that?
We would have to, I think we would have to work around the in-water work window. I'm not certain, but because we are not changing any of the pilings, we're just changing the decking. But generally what we try and do with these projects is literally by labor, we get to September, schools are back in session, and we start the construction. So if we are able to accomplish this in that much time, like from September through November, after that it gets too wet. So if we're able to pull it off, that's what we'll plan on doing.
Okay. And can you please send the date range or the dates that the council previously discussed, Beaver Lake, ball fields, improvements? I'm sure there's a ton of information in those presentations the council previously received that I'd like to review. Okay.
Yeah. And the one specific one was that February 15th of 22. But yes, we can follow up with an email.
Okay. And then finally, I didn't start my time correctly, but I agree with Councilmember O'Farrell that going after some of those smaller projects for quicker wins for people would be something that I think the community would appreciate. I also understand that every year that we kick something down the road, it's not getting cheaper. So, and understanding to Councilmember Stewart's point, staff capacity for actually being able to execute how many small projects equals a big project or something, so that we can kind of understand, as we're moving dollars, we're also moving staff hours with that, and what does that look like? So we can think about that as we're prioritizing. And I've got Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to see if I can get you guys, oh, you changed slides. The summary slide with a cost on it, the Excel.
Sorry.
I don't know which one that is.
Is it?
Where you've got the fund, the ending fund balance one.
I will say that the slide that we have with the ending fund balance is just a theoretical exercise. It's not accurate down to the dollar.
That's okay. My question on that one is, when you come back to us after you get this feedback, will this then balance when you're done? Because now you've got a 14.4 deficit.
That is our goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, just weighing in on doing the small projects, you said you had a methodology for prioritization. So would we be usurping that prioritization if you do small projects? Because you said we prioritized them and they were critical, and I watched the commission determine what was critical and what wasn't.
Right.
But if we skip through that, what does that do then?
Like if we don't do some of them? Or?
Yeah. If we do some small ones and then we usurp the prioritization that you just used to put them in that order.
Well, we have a number of smaller projects that are priorities for our staff. So I'll just.
Okay. I'm just looking for consistency, right?
No, of course. Yeah. And so Pine Lake, you can see, there are a number of smaller budget items comparatively. There are a number of them here in the 27-28 budget that we've highlighted.
Got it. Okay. I guess my suggestion would be, if you have a criteria, we should be consistent. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I'm glad you popped that back up because I'd forgotten my question. Beaver Lake Ball Fields parking lot improvements. Would we really do that next year if we're planning in the next 6 years to redo the whole thing?
No, those are contingent on each other. So there are some things that are overlapping like that and causing additional budget. So if a priority came from council that you wanted to move forward with the athletic field project, then we would hold that parking lot improvement to happen at the same time, and it wouldn't be a separate line item.
Okay, so that we would only do this next year if we said we're not going to do the ball fields at all.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm not in favor of that. I do think those ball fields, that land is underutilized, so.
Councilmember Boyer. Okay. I have no other lights on, so I think we are all set. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Council. And we'll just give Amber a minute to switch to the second presentation. And while she's pulling that up, I will just share that the General Government Capital Improvement Plan again shows the 6-year plan for 27 to 32. And what we have not done is taken the feedback from last week's presentation, what we heard from council about the facility electrification study. We haven't been able to incorporate that because we're still working with the consultant to see how we can answer your questions and to explore if we can phase out some of that work. So with that, I will turn it over to Andrew Roddy.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members for hearing us today. We will be going over the 27 to 32 General Government CIP update today. We will start with the overview of the General Government CIP, follow with a review of our current CIP list, and then move to next steps. As previously discussed, under the Parks Planning, the General Government Capital Improvement Plan is a 6-year tool for planning and guides the development and maintenance of our facilities. These are planning level estimates and proposed timeframes and not an official budget document. And the capital projects are when they typically are greater than $50,000 and extends or preserves the life of an asset. We have a number of CIP references that we use to feed our information here, including a 2022 facility condition assessment, a 2025 facility needs assessment, the 2026 facilities electrification study that was presented to you just a week ago, and the 2026 building 120 feasibility study that is currently in progress. These are the projects that we will be going over here, and a breakdown of when we feel that these projects should be designed and then constructed. Starting with Fire Station 83 that we gave an update on a few weeks ago. This involves a remodel of an existing building to bring it into compliance with current codes and ADA guidelines. We have roughly $9.3 million remaining in the 27-28 budget, and we are currently in permitting, and we will go out to bid early in Q3. The City Hall pump and plumbing fixtures. This involves an investigation surrounding the domestic water system at City Hall, as well as replacing some existing plumbing fixtures related to PSI concerns for the building from the utilities. This budget is $125K, and we are slated for 2027 for this work. This is related to the facility electrification study that we presented previously, and this would involve replacing the HVAC system components to come into compliance with the state mandates that we've previously discussed with you, involving energy use and greenhouse gas emissions. We currently have $525,000 budgeted for the solar portion of the project to be performed in 27 and 28. And the remaining amount on the project would occur as a planning estimate for 2029 to 32. And the status of that is currently on hold until we get direction from council. And we are currently working with our consultant to resolve the concerns that the council broached previously. The plaza concrete replacement, it's deteriorating and needs to be addressed. The existing drainage system will need to be modified to bring it into compliance with the current codes. We currently have a budget on the books for $100,000 for design, with a planning estimate of $4 million to repair and replace the current plaza. This is slated to begin in 28 as far as design, with construction starting in 29. The City Hall lighting retrofit would involve a retrofit of the existing lighting controls in order to make the building more efficient. And we currently have that budgeted for $420,000, hoping to begin design this year with construction in 2027. The Boys and Girls Club, this would involve HVAC and lighting upgrades for the building to replace end-of-life components and retrofit the existing lighting and controls in order to make the building more efficient. We currently have $500,000 budgeted for that, and this project is slated for 2028. The renovation of the Beaver Lake Lodge, this would include an interior remodel involving the HVAC systems, new air conditioning, a roof replacement, fall protection, electrical upgrades, and restroom renovations to bring it into compliance with an ADA assessment. We are currently estimating $1.775 million for this, with the design slated to begin in 2030 and construction in 2031. We're hoping to align this with the parks improvements that were discussed previously. The MOC HVAC upgrades, this is related to the facilities electrification study that was brought up previously. And this would be to replace the HVAC system components to come into compliance with state mandates for energy use and greenhouse gas emissions. Again, we've broken this down into the solar portion for the 27-28 budget of $525,000, with a portion of the work occurring in 29 to 32 of $550,000, which would be replacing the gas unit heaters with electric versions, and the out cost of 2032 of $4.645 million as a planning estimate for electrification of the air handlers. And this is currently on hold until council gives direction based on the findings of the facilities electrification study. Based on the needs of the 2025 facilities needs assessment, the city will need to expand the MOC square footage in order to maintain the current service level to the community. There is not room at the current MOC site to accomplish this, and a second site will be needed to facilitate these needs. We have a cost in the 2029 to 32 budget of $4 million for acquisition and design, with an estimate after that of $41 million involving planning estimate and construction post-2032. And this is on hold until a property is selected for acquisition. The MOC HVAC controls, this is a review of the existing system and replace the existing controls for the lighting and direct digital controls of the dedicated outside air system in order to increase energy efficiency of the building. This involves things like making sure that when the bay doors are up, we don't have the HVAC systems running. This is entirely separate from the HVAC upgrades, so we don't want any confusion there that these are overlapping in a way. This is a system for control, not the end-use components. And we have this budgeted for the 27-28 years at $475,000, and we would like to do that during that time. The traffic shop is currently located in a building that is slated for demolition, and it will need to be relocated. And we believe that we could do that for $125,000. And we currently have that slated for 2029 to coincide with the demolition of said property. We also maintain a capital replacement program that is a fund to accommodate potential unidentified end-of-life items at city assets that don't fall under other categories. This is based on our 2022 facilities condition assessment, and it includes but is not limited to Building 120, which is tied into the feasibility study that is currently underway. At the point that the conclusion of the study is made and the council approves it, we can make a determination about the path forward for the building. We currently have $1 million as a budget allowance in 27-28, and with a planning estimate of $7.5 million for 29 to 32. Going back to items that were mentioned in the facilities electrification, but not specifically part of that project itself, was the fleet electrification infrastructure upgrades. This is based on the 2025 study that was performed that stated that we would need to expand our infrastructure in order to convert our fleet into an electric vehicle fleet. This work would occur at City Hall and the MOC. It's currently slated for $3.975 million in our planning estimate, and we currently have it marked to begin in 2029 with construction slated for 2030. The South Yard, these would be improvements for MOC usage. This would install permanent fencing, a CCTV security system, paving, and tree removal to improve the usage for public works. We have this budgeted for $150,000, and we would like to begin work next year on this. We have the swing house that is slated for demolition on account of if we do maintain this building, we will fall under more stringent code requirements that would involve a very extensive connection to a sewer system. And we have this currently slated for demolition in 2027. Our next steps would be to refine this recommended general government COP and incorporate the council feedback in the draft budget and capital plan. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And we'll start off with Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so I make sure, we can make sure we're looking at the same thing here. This has got a 6-year total at roughly 40 million, but in our agenda packet for the council, you've got in our general government fund 301, it's got 28 million. That difference, is that?
You know, I think I understand what might be the case here. When we submitted the draft agenda packet, we did not have this ready. We gave you for reference the current CIP, and we identified it such. We said you have an exhibit, which is your 26 to 31.
Yeah.
And that is old. That is what you have in place today, and we just put that in as a placeholder for reference, but then we came back and updated it, both with the park CIP and the facilities, to now reflect the draft 27 to 32. So apologies for that confusion, because the numbers...
Good. Yeah, that would be really helpful to get, for us to look at the most recent accurate numbers. That answers a lot of my questions, because, I look at this also and I don't know, is this deficit or is this within budget? Because this is just expense, right?
Right, this is
just
but I
your
want to
spending.
clarify that your packets should have been updated, and if you look at your packets as of Friday of last week, the presentation was loaded, and this should be the spreadsheet.
In the presentation, yeah. I was just looking at
and the exhibit, unless there's a snafu in the exhibit that was attached, and we can go back and check.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
then back to my question.
Yes.
This is the expense. Did you show the revenue somewhere in here then?
the revenues for your general government CIP are from the ending fund balance of your general fund.
Which is what?
Councilmember, we'll have to get back to you on what that number is. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Really? Just kidding. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Train.
So on this slide right here, we're looking at a budgeted, let's see, you called it planning estimate for the budgets at $18,395,000, 27, 28 combined. I think on your next slide, you say that there's 9 million for, 9.3 million for Pine Lake Station. And then as you were going through your presentation, I just started adding up all the rest of the numbers for that wasn't 2029 going forward, got to 5.5 million. So 9 and 5, okay, make it 6 is 15. So there's a difference of about $3 million based on the presentation you just made. So is there other stuff that's in the exhibits that or later on that are just weren't included in your presentation?
No, the numbers should generally add up. What you're seeing here is what follows on the slides.
Okay, I don't,
we can go back.
I'll say maybe I did my math wrong, but I was pretty accurate. That being said, the other thing that kind of, so let's just go with the 18. This is what you're going to be presenting as our budget in for the next 2 years, correct? All right. because I didn't do this on the other one, so yeah, you're going to have to trim that way down. I don't see where, unless you can show me where the revenue's coming from for these projects, for all this stuff. I'm just looking at it going, there's no way. And then if we commit ourselves so here's the other one. If we commit ourselves to some of these smaller numbers, 125, 350 here, 500,000 here, does it then commit us to the 41 million plus going forward for electrification? Because the road projects, when we do that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, we get committed to a lot more than just this 2-year budget here. And so I understand on parks, things get stopped, Anjali, but on this one, like we're not stopping the fire station. So once we made the decision as a council to move forward with the fire station, this is the second one, right?
Correct.
And it's going to happen.
Let's hope to get good bids.
Right.
Yes.
So it's going to happen. So we committed ourselves to the $9 million or whatever the price tag is going to be on that we're going to pay for that.
Correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I don't want to find myself getting trapped into as a city, right, into dollars that I can't pay for. Or I believe the question was asked already, but where's the money coming from? Well, if it's coming from where's the money coming from again, Scott?
General fund balance, Councilmember.
Yeah. Well, wait a second. I'd like to use that money for something else, like paying for my staff to keep their jobs. Thank you.
Can I just point to there's the big project that we said is still in here that you, once we hear back from the consultants and get you some answers, you have decisions to make, is your City Hall HVAC upgrades, which is a straight $5.5 million in your next budget. 500,000 is for solar. So there's a couple of decisions. Do you want to do solar, and do you want us to go down that path? And then would you like to proceed with the HVAC upgrades? Because that's the next biggest number after Fire Station 83.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Okay. Mayor, is it appropriate for me to ask council a question or pose a thought to council?
We can attempt to coordinate the conversation.
Okay. And I'm probably going to put the cat among the pigeons, but sure, here I go.
I don't know what that means, but I love that. Can you say that again? We're going to put the what with the pigeons?
Cat among the pigeons.
The cat among the pigeons. Okay.
Just
Sorry,
visualize
I had to write that one down.
Okay. Because we're talking about all of this, and this is all very nice. But I just wonder, when we're talking about doing all these upgrades to all our assets, would it not be prudent, or would it not be, I feel it would be prudent, let me just say that, of reinstating the tile project on our floor out here. Like if we're talking about all these other upgrades to our facilities, and we're going to painting the exterior and that kind of thing, and it may not be appropriate to bring it in this conversation. So I wasn't sure where I could bring it up, but I just wanted to kind of put a little note there that, you know, if we're talking about all these things, we're going to like do HVAC upgrades and all that type of thing, which obviously we should do over time. Should we not go back and rediscuss the tile project? And I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not expecting any answers or anything like that, but I just wanted to put it out there.
I think that's an appropriate thing to ask, and it's certainly as we were talking a couple CIPs ago, if we've got proposals to add or remove, we can certainly make those, and then what we'd look for is 4 council members total in support of going a direction. So what you'd be asking, I think, are there 4 individuals on the council who support adding that back into the CIP in some location?
Yeah, thank you for you nutshelled it for me. So yes, that's probably what I am asking, yeah.
Okay, council, if there's no objection, we'll just pause, and I'll just go down the row and see if there's head nods for approval to, at some location within this 6-year general government CIP, to add the tile back into this. So, Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, I guess I'm in Councilmember Treen's camp, and since this is already over, $265,000 again over is immaterial, right? We're already over, so throw it in there. Since we're going to have to trim this down anyways, I think it's amongst the many things we're going to have to figure out how to get through.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes, add it back in.
Councilmember Trini.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
I would say yes. I think at some point we have to do it. I just didn't think we should do it right now. Councilmember, Deputy Mayor.
We can add it back in, but I echo Councilmember Boyer that that doesn't mean we're going to leave it in the end.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Did you have any other comments? Okay. We will go on to Councilmember Lamb.
For the second MOC, I thought we purchased that property on Issaquah Falls City Road, right, for a possible second MOC. Is that not working out?
One of the high priorities was what we call the Sween Yard, and that is a storage yard, or what we've called the Notch property in Town Center. It's a city-owned parcel that's used for storage. So one of the things that was rising to the top is we need to find a home for that. And this property came up for sale, and so that was one of the first things we were going to accomplish. And this South Yard also is far enough from our current MOC where it really helps improve our service when you do snow and ice, because you're able to store materials at the South Yard. And that's what triggered the need to do a holistic needs assessment for our MOC, because we knew we had a traffic shop to move, and we knew we needed some place for storage, but what we hadn't done is a holistic a study of what our needs would be over the next 20 years. But when we completed that study, this site would not accommodate everything.
Okay, all right. I have a question on why do we use general fund for some of these projects like the fire station and the HVAC upgrades? Because those are clearly improvements, capital improvements, system replacements. Why do we not use REIT?
Councilmember Lamb, I'll jump in on that one. You may recall that it's a policy decision how REIT gets used. And council has made the policy decision in our financial policies to split the REIT we do get, half for the park CIP and half for the transportation CIP. And so given that policy direction, our only other funding source for these general government projects has traditionally been from the general fund itself. And also recognize that these types of projects, that there aren't a lot of opportunities to go get grants or other kind of funding. This is really stuff that we kind of have to tackle on our own, if you will.
But could we change the policy and use REIT?
You absolutely could, and there's things to weigh out with changing a policy like that, and that's always council's option. But you may recall, I think it was when we did the last biennial budget, we revamped our financial policies. I'm looking back at my memory back there. Yes, and we brought that policy decision to council as part of that, and council elected to keep that REIT distribution the same. That's not to say that you couldn't change it, but that's how it's set up right now.
Okay. I know that in the last meeting, the council majority didn't want to move forward with the HVAC upgrades. I think we need to figure out how we can still do it, whether it's phasing. I really support that, especially when I look at the budgets for like park, for instance. We're looking at spending almost $70 million in the next 6 years on parks. Am I right? You know, including the Beaver Lake and all those. I mean, it's substantial. And somehow this council majority cannot seem to find $3 million, which is the net we would pay for City Hall electrification. So, you know, both parks and decarbonization is a positive for our environment. It improves our quality of life. So I really think that we need to find a way to find the budget for the HVAC upgrades. And I know this is going to come back, and I will again speak to that because I just don't understand how we can view both parks and something that would be a huge benefit for the environment differently. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, obviously the budget is a big angst for everyone. And I think what might be helpful is for each of these projects, if you go back to your slide with the chart on it, what might be helpful is to be able to share this is one of the things we do at work is sort of what are the bad things that will happen if we don't do this, right? So I know it's hard because a lot of these feel like they don't have a direct positive impact on the community. But if we think about, let's take the plaza concrete replacement. I know it's pretty inexpensive in 27 and 28, but it could be a lot in 2029. If we don't do that, right, what are the bad things that could happen, right? We could have erosion. We have a lot of events there. You know, what does that mean? And I think that's what we need to understand is, and just like when we talk about like the repavement or resurfacing projects is like, if we try to eke this out, if we try to push this out, we may save money today, but will we increase costs or not, right? Will we increase costs on maintenance that we have to do to keep an old HVAC system alive or those types of things? And I think that will help us to have to make these difficult decisions of like, it is a lot of money and it is really hard. However, if we delay these things, you know, sure, we can make the budget look good today, but in 2029 or 2031, it's going to explode because then all of these things are going to happen. Or what happens if it breaks and it can't be repaired and we have to do it on an emergency basis? So I think that would be really helpful. I know this is painful, but I do think that, you know, some of these things we may be able to push out another year or two, but some of them maybe not. And I think that's what we need your professional opinions on is, you know, what is that risk reward, if you will, or what is that risk ratio that says if we delay this, what is the risk that it's going to cost us a whole lot more? Because I want to be sure we're not being penny wise and pound foolish. But I also want to be realistic that we have to find some smoothing effects. And then, you know, the mayor has already brought up bonding. I know that that will be challenging. We may have to go out to a voter-approved bond because we don't have the funds to cover councilmanic bonding necessarily. But I've been a proponent for 8 years now of going out and getting bonds for some of our capital projects. It makes sense. It generally, the interest, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, the interest usually is less than the inflation on these types of construction projects. It also makes sure that, you know, if I move away or someone moves away and someone else moves in, the people who are here now are the ones who are paying for those improvements that they are getting to enjoy. So I do think that one of the things this council is going to have to reckon with is it time for us to look at potentially borrowing money to do some of these capital projects? I've been trying to find another city with more than 25,000 residents in the state of Washington that doesn't have any debt, and I haven't found one yet. I'm not saying they're not there, but I'm struggling to find any other city in the state of Washington that doesn't have debt to fund their capital projects. So that would be my 2 cents. I would rather do these things. I would rather not upgrade the HVAC and then expect some council 10 years from now to rip out a working HVAC system to replace it with something more energy efficient. I think we need to make good long-term decisions. Those are always better in business and in government. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got a couple questions here. Do we have, for the City Hall lighting retrofit, and then same with the Boys and Girls Club, as part of that study, did we have a payoff calculation?
We have a power consumption calculation that is an estimate of 45 to 50% reduction in power. We don't have a cost associated with that, but that is our idea of replacing the existing fluorescent lights with LED, and that in City Hall would help us get to that benchmark of 2030 that we were discussing last week. Okay. That is one of the things that we currently have in the queue to try and help get us across that finish line that we were discussing.
But if we don't do the City Hall lighting retrofits next year, we're still going to be able to turn on the lights. So it's not a critical.
This is an efficiency, and we believe that we don't have the number for cost savings, but we do know that we will decrease the power consumption significantly.
Okay. Do you know when the current MOC was built?
The current MOC was built in 2011, and 2022 there was a remodel that expanded it with Building C.
In the document, Director, you sent everyone, it talked about the MOC, and we need a second location to maintain the level of service, but it connected the level of service to the population, and I had a hard time connecting how population growth related to M&O works, when really I thought in my mind the constraint would have been number of roads, size of city, assets. So is there a direct connection, or is it just because we have more people, theoretically we have more stuff?
Partly that, but there's also traffic that is related to that. There are just activity in the infrastructure that are related to population density, and those were factored in that growth.
Okay. I think so. Councilmember Stewart spoke to it a little bit on the bond issue. I think this is something we need to look at it, whether it's Council Manick or going out to the voters. And Councilmember Lamb spoke to the REIT policy. I think that's an interesting idea. I think it matches my thought process on what does the city government need to do versus must do. And sorry, Anjali, as much as I love our parks, like adding more money to our great park system when we've got things that need repair, it might not balance out. So my proposal to council, and I'll come down the row, is it's a broad request that as part of our budget process and this process, we reevaluate our financial policies that prior councils have had in place that are impacting us now, whether it's related to bonds or our REIT division, anything like that I might not be thinking of, so that we can come to this clear-eyed and understanding what constraints we have put on ourselves that we might be able to loosen up a little bit. So I'll start, Councilmember Boyer, with you if that's something you agree with.
Great, thanks.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
I don't think he answered.
Oh, you were asking.
I thought you said agreed, thanks. Oh, no, your light was on. There was a confusion. So I was asking, I'm going to go down and ask if the council agrees with what I proposed about our financial policies.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things in there, Mr. Mayor. I'm not a fan of debt. If it's a bond that we vote on, the citizens agree, I get that. I don't agree with putting our city in debt, and I don't think anyone will loan us money based on our current condition. In terms of changing our policy on that, if I think about REIT and impact fees, that's what funds our transportation, and then the rest of the REIT goes into parks. I'm not sure what's left then for general fund, so it's not like there's a ton there, and all of a sudden, if we reroute it, all of a sudden we can multiply money. So I'm okay with listening to that. I'm not sure if that solves our problem. Does that get to your question?
It
Mr.
does.
Mayor?
It sounds like you're maybe, but also leaning.
Well, I want to.
So I think the staff would probably take you as
bond, no. Voter bond, sure. If the citizens want to put themselves in debt, re-looking at our financial flows of money, sure. Love to see how that works.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Treen?
No.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I'll say yes, and I will just reiterate that oftentimes the interest we pay on the bond is less than the inflationary numbers. So we've had a couple of road projects that have been on the tip for a long time, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger. And sometimes now, because they've been there for so long, they're an order of magnitude bigger. And so if we had taken a bond 10 years ago and done the project 10 years ago, in the end, we would have paid a lot less than what we're going to pay in the future. So I look at that as kind of good debt. Like, your mortgage is often good debt. So I think it's not a solution to everything, but I do think that when used appropriately, it's actually a benefit to the community. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Can you restate your question for me, please, exactly?
So I gave a few examples: bonding, councilmanic, or voter, and then financial policies, for example, our REIT distribution and how we're using that. And then I kind of ended it with anything that is any policy positions the council has put itself in that's kind of tying our hands in optionality.
I definitely support revisiting our financial policies. Because I think we have some budget policies too that might be influencing this. We wouldn't qualify for a councilmanic bond, so I don't have to even agree or disagree on that. We can't get one. Potentially could discuss a voter one, but I really don't support going for debt either. I think we need to live within our means.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I've got. So, Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, thank you. Just real quick. Now that we've gone through Public Works and the rest of the capital plans, both of yours, and I now realize that some of the numbers we're looking at are different. You know, the years shifted out and all. So now I'm kind of off balance in terms of does this, do our expenses exceed our revenue? I'm agreeing with Councilmember Treen in terms of, I don't want to burden our citizens, and it's our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that this balances. So I guess the question is, looking at the summary level CIP or the comprehensive CIP, however you want to call it, when do we think we can get that? Because now I'm looking at, inaccurate information, and I'd like to know that going forward.
First, I'd just like to clarify, your packets do have the updated information for both parks and facilities.
Yeah, but it's not in this. I want the summary one.
And the summary one, when you say summary, you're
It's in
looking
our-
at public works, parks, and facilities.
The summary I'm looking for is you could. Did it? Okay. It was in our. It wasn't in the presentation. It's in our packet in the explanation, and it is a link, and so it shows. I don't know what you really call it, but I'll call it a comprehensive CIP, which has got all the funds and all the revenue, and it gives me a grand total of expenses versus revenue, so I can see how we're doing it as a totality. Because you do a lot of fund transfers, you move things around, and I got to see that in total. When I look at yours independently, I don't get that view. Does that help clarify? Because I want to know what that is.
Right, it does, and I will say that, we have, in all transparency, shared these with you more to get your feedback back to the park CIP. We are acknowledging that we are showing that we are 14 million over, and we are going to come back and balance that. So that's specific to the parks one.
Yep.
The facilities one, we know that some of the facility electrification study may shift your dollars out. Now, when you bring public works, parks, and facilities together, I believe that is what our finance director will be doing to bring that to you. And I'm looking at our city manager.
Ambivalent as to who gives it to me.
Yeah, Councilmember, if I may, I think what you were looking at is the full CIP from the ARC, what we're currently in now, and we will be bringing that forward as part of the budget when we come back in the fall. And part of what we still have to do is to do all that work. Given the feedback that we get from council, we'll make adjustments as part of the budget review process, and then and that will be part of the discussion for council in the fall.
Not until the fall is when usually we'll not
yeah.
see that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other lights on. Give people a second and no more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
David, do you have an idea of how long you think your presentation?
More than 2 hours.
we have streamlined it quite a bit. So I'm guessing, what, a 15-minute presentation?
We have about 10 to 15 minutes of talking, and then questions
Okay.
are dictated by you.
Perfect. We just don't have to extend yet, but we will need to do it. So thank you.
So, Mayor, Council, good evening. For the record, David Pyle, Department of Community Development. I should have brought you a box of Red Bull. I think my teenagers drank all of it at home, though. So this evening, we are here to present to you some proposed code amendments to Title 24A. We have Miriam Leitner, our planning manager, and Jackie Belial, who is our management analyst, who has been working on this with the with the Planning Commission. And I probably pronounced Jackie's last name wrong, because I always do. So I apologize for that in advance. But while they get promoted, I will say that this is something we've looked forward to for quite a bit of time. We have some experience in implementing 24A, and it has led to some realizations that there's some improvements that are needed. We're really wanting to make it as accessible to the public as possible, and also something that is something we can track year over year, so that we don't snowball docketed items on us, if you will, because then we realize that we have all these things we plan to do that we never got done. So with that, I'll turn it over to Miriam.
Actually, to Jackie. Thank you. As David said, I'm Jackie Belial. He likes to rhyme my last name with his. It does not rhyme. I'm a management analyst with community development, and I'm joined by Miriam Leitner, our planning manager. Tonight we'll focus on a review of the proposed updates to Title 24A, which governs the process for updating the city's comprehensive plan and development regulations. We have 13 quick slides for you. We'll do a quick background on the topic, how we addressed key issues, the recommended changes from the Planning Commission, some staff corrections, and our next steps, and then we'll open the discussion to hear your feedback and answer any questions about the draft. A quick project timeline. So staff began research and drafting in January of this year. We also analyzed codes from Issaquah, Redmond, Kirkland, Covington, Bellevue, Mercer Island, Newcastle, Maple Valley, and Snoqualmie, and reached out to MRSC to identify best practices. We had introductory meetings with the Planning Commission and City Council in February and March to provide an overview of the key issues we hope to address through this update. And after incorporating the Planning Commission's comments in April, the legal review of the draft and review from the City Manager's Office, Parks, Public Works, Communications, we went to the Planning Commission twice in May for a final review and a public hearing. So we're now bringing the draft to you all for review and hopefully a public hearing in July. So when we last brought this issue to you in March, we presented several key issues that we were hoping to address with this update. So after working these through with the Planning Commission, we wanted to bring the proposed solutions back tonight. The first key issue relates to the timing and submittal deadlines. So currently the annual deadline is in August, and we have a 30-day turnaround for applications, which usually falls over the winter holidays. So we asked the council if there were priorities we should be aligning our timing with, and receive feedback from several to align with the work plan development and one to align with the budget. And after discussion, we are proposing to keep the annual deadline the same, but to increase the turnaround deadline from 30 to 90 days to ensure the applicant has enough time to complete it. And then this change will also allow staff to know which docketed requests need to be added to the work plan and give staff enough time to pull together any necessary budget requests. The second key issue is to clarify how and when the city's commissions, council, and staff should initiate docket requests. So this section under who may apply now has a clear process for when the Planning Commission and City Council want to submit a docket request as a formal body versus when a commissioner or City Council member wants to submit something on their own behalf. And it also clarifies that staff follow the same process as members of the public or individual council members and commissioners. The third key issue relates to public hearing notification methods. So Title 24A currently requires 2 additional public hearing notification methods beyond those that are required in Title 21. So this means that the project and administrative staff have to track the type of amendment being completed and then follow 2 separate processes to address the applicable noticing requirements. So this takes more time, but the bigger concern is that it exposes the city to risk if the notice is shared incorrectly. So as part of the updated language in 24A 15 030 notice for public hearings. The requirement to post on social media was removed, and legal helped us to clarify the email notification language to reduce the risk. And then just a couple other changes that were topics of discussion were Section 21A 100203, which is the outstanding amendment proposals. This was a new section added to address amendment proposals that have not progressed through the legislative process since being added to the docket. Miriam will cover this in a couple of slides as it was part of the Planning Commission's recommendations. And then there was also an update to 24A 05020, which was amendment frequency, and we combined the two sections. So it was formerly the periodic update and the annual amendment section, and we just reduced it into one section to reduce the redundancy. And then I'll go ahead and hand it over to Miriam.
Okay, so we're now moving on to changes resulting from the Planning Commission's recommendations, which are included in the red line version of tonight's packet. The first change was in the purpose section of Title 24A. The initial section had read, "The City of Sammamish Comprehensive Plan guides the nature and intensity of development in the city." And with the Planning Commission recommendation integrated, it now reads, "The City of Sammamish Comprehensive Plan guides the nature of land use in the city." The focus of the Planning Commission's remaining two recommendations was to ensure that docketed items receive timely legislative review and that the process, including the decision made, is transparent. Right now, the annual docket review only includes new docket items submitted since the prior annual deadline. By expanding that approach beyond new docket requests to include also a status review of amendment proposals and a discussion and determination of action on those that haven't completed legislative review for the past 5 years, the Planning Commission and City Council will be better able to provide recommendations, direction, and prioritization of work plan items. Since the Planning Commission recommendation and discussion focused on integrating the review of outstanding amendment proposals into the annual docket process, this topic was moved from the legislative review of amendment proposal section to the docket request process section. We also added new subsections to integrate the review and discussion of outstanding amendment proposals into the annual docket process, which includes 2 public hearings. In the outstanding amendment proposals section, wording was adjusted to align with the Planning Commission recommendation, changing "the City Council may take action on such amendment proposals" to "the City Council must take action on such amendment proposals." We also added that in addition to the City Council being able to remove an amendment proposal or integrate it into the next comp plan periodic update, Council could also add an amendment proposal to the next annual work plan or integrate it into an existing work plan item. We also wanted to highlight a few additional items identified after the Planning Commission review while we were preparing the red lines in the matrix for this meeting. These were integrated into tonight's packet materials because they clarify, simplify, or correct errors that we found in the code. A few outstanding references to site-specific land use map amendments were updated to future land use map amendments to ensure consistency throughout the title. In the area-wide amendment section, we did want to note that earlier this evening we caught an error in the red lines. The definition for area-wide future land use map amendments was partially deleted. It should say area-wide future land use map amendments, which are city-initiated updates to multiple parcels, often with many owners, to implement the comprehensive plan. You can find the correct version at the bottom of page 4 in the May 21st Planning Commission packet. We really do apologize for this error, and we're going to make sure that it gets corrected in the next version of the draft code in the matrix. But in that same section, there are also 2 changes that we wanted to highlight. The first was to remove the reference to area-wide zoning map. We're going to be working separately from Title 24A to make sure that that gets integrated into Title 21. The second was to add an exception for the creation and updating of sub-area plans and neighborhood center plans to occur outside of periodic updates. While the RCW does provide an exemption for the initial adoption of a sub-area plan, and our comprehensive plan at the city identifies that future sub-areas and neighborhood centers are to be developed through a sub-area planning process, we wanted to ensure that the city had flexibility to create and update sub-area plans as well as neighborhood center plans outside of the periodic updates, because these are critical components in implementing the comprehensive plan policies and goals. SMC 24A100102 specifies who may apply, as Jackie was mentioning earlier, and how these various groups can submit an annual docket request. In our re-review of the draft, we noted that the process for the Planning Commission and the City Council were essentially the same, so we've combined these sections into a single section to reduce redundancy. And finally, we adjusted the wording in the notice for public hearing section to make it clear that the notice must be distributed 14 days prior to the public hearing, not that the public has to subscribe to city emails 14 days before the hearing. And wrapping up, we have a jot form that was emailed to council last Friday. That's going to remain open until 8 a.m. on Monday, June 15th, so that council can make any corrections or edits as it completes its review. Minor corrections and edits will be incorporated into the next draft, and more substantive items will be shared with the council for direction at the public hearing. Once we have the final updated draft, we're going to send it to legal for review, and we are tentatively scheduled, as Jackie mentioned previously, to have a public hearing on July 21st. So with that, we will open it up for any questions and feedback. Thank you.
All right, I'm looking for lights. I don't see any. I still don't see any. Okay. Deputy Mayor.
I will submit mine to the jot form, so I don't think I need to go through all of the questions I had, but I do want to quickly scan them and see if there's anything that warrants some discussion, okay? I did raise the question that, so we have decided that neighborhood area plans and sub-area plans can be modified every year as long as they get on the docket, right? And so that's a big change, actually, because it wasn't that way before. There's one phrase in here, if you look, it's section, what section is this? It's in the packet on page 78, but it says placement of a docket request on the annual docket does not mean the amendment proposal city council. It's not a sentence. And I don't understand, I just have a question. I don't know what that sentence is, or I think it's the heading of a section or something, but it doesn't make any sense. So just something to point out.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. It may be a typo or it may just be the flow of the red line, but we'll follow up.
Yeah, and then I thought in that same section, there's a statement that says, and a request not docketed may at council's discretion be included in an upcoming work program if it raises policy or land use issues more appropriately addressed by such ongoing work program. Couldn't there be other, I mean, that implies that those are the only two reasons you could do that. I just feel like that's ambiguous, and who knows what reasons might come up for it. So I just think it might be a little restrictive, but maybe you had a reason for wording it that way. To me, it's really ambiguous about what's allowed and what isn't, and it's really limited now to only if it should be addressed on a which is appropriately addressed on a work plan. I don't know how you're going to interpret that. So maybe I should just give you all these. I think we're all really tired, and there's quite a few in here that are, kind of substantive. They're not things I think need to change. They're just things I want to understand what the impact of them is. So I'll let it go at that and make sure I fill out your form.
Okay, I don't see any other lights. Oh man, you all could have gone first and been out of here really quick.
I think it's only because they went last that it went slow.
We drew the short straw, but that's fine. I do want to highlight that if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us through the city manager's office. We're happy to meet to talk through this. In addition to reviewing the comments received through the jot form, we do learn a lot through dialogue with you all. So would appreciate any opportunity to have a dialogue about any sections where you might think it could be improved, and maybe we could find a way to improve it before the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other part of your presentation? All right, you're all set. Thank you very much. Council, up next we have public comment. We have 12 minutes left. I don't think we're going to have too much public comment, but I think we have enough to extend probably 15 minutes. So if there's some we can keep going. Okay, let's go to public comment.
Those who have pre-registered and would like to provide online public comment, please raise your hand.
We're all set in the room. Thank you. That was a
Mr.
miss
Stickney,
on my
when you're
part.
ready.
Hello, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I have a couple comments about the last topic on the docket. Let me start over there. Was happy to hear some of the changes that the staff added from when the Planning Commission last addressed this. And because of that, I have a lot less to say. I'll just mention one thing. I've sat through and participated in the 24A changes in 2016, 17, and 2019, and now. And I like the fact that the 24A calls out specifically that residents can make a docket request, commissions can make one, staff and city council can. What I had advocated for was two things to mention. One, I think that city council may want to retain the right to do more than a site-specific change in centers. If something comes up, I don't know what that something is. Maybe a lot of R1 properties that want to assemble and do cottage housing that the community feels is in the community interest. Would it be wise for only city council to retain the option to do a non-periodic review for more than one parcel not tied to a center? So that's my revised statement after hearing this. And something I mentioned at a couple of the Planning Commission meetings, I think it would be wise, and I don't want to talk about the how-to because I'm not sure about the how-to, so I'll talk about the what. I think that, Title 24A should have an example of when a docket is appropriate and should also reference when the quasi-judicial process is used for a site-specific change in land use, and put that same thing where the quasi-judicial is, discussed, because it wasn't that clear at the Planning Commission meeting. So, in general, it's possible to change the zoning one tick up under quasi-judicial, and you don't need the docket. So, when is either appropriate cross-referenced in 24A and on the city website about quasi-judicial? Those are my only two comments, and appreciate the opportunity.
That's all for online public comment.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll move on to council reports. Councilmember Boyer. Councilmember Lamb.
I have a solid waste advisory committee meeting on Friday. I sent out the agenda. The main topic is the proposed 2027 King County solid waste increase. And we'll also be talking about the utility summit. I forget the full name of it, but we had it last year and it was really useful, and I hope they bring it back again.
Thank you. Councilmember Trine.
EF&R is coming up on Thursday. Thanks.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, speaking of EFR, I know I've shared information out with the council. I have shared information with a couple of you personally. One of the things we're trying to do is assess the long-term governance and financing options for Eastside Fire and Rescue. We really want to be able to start to pick a direction to move in. We're not looking to make any commitments or lock into anything, but currently we're kind of going in circles around, we're sort of dancing around the issues, and until we pick an option and start to do an exploratory committee and dive deep, we probably aren't going to get any deeper information than what we have today. So please do take a look at that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to get on a call or meet with you in person to address any of your concerns, or at least get the questions that you have to make sure we can get those answered in the next EFR meeting. So please do take a look at that. It's really important that we address this. The current EFR agreement does expire in 2031, so we will have to either renew what we have or we will have to make some changes by then. Thanks.
Thank you. Update from the subcommittee on the interim city manager. We are interviewing for candidates on Monday afternoon. If you could please, if you have any questions you would like the subcommittee to consider as part of our process, email them to Mike Sugg by Thursday so that he can incorporate them in the options presented to us for asking those questions. That would be appreciated. And then I would also like us to take a position on the King County Transportation District amendments that are in front of the district. So King County has a King County Transportation District, which allows them to levy a tax. The question before the the directors is, should they allocate 12.5% of the revenue back to King County cities? This is going to get a vote. It's already been debated several times. No city will receive more than 15% of the total pass-through. And there'd be a floor given out to cities who contribute of $10,000. So at a minimum, cities would get $10,000. We probably would get more. It's 12.5% of the total pie that they collect would go back to cities. And of that share, of that amount that goes back to cities, there'd be a 15% cap. So what I'm asking, I sent this as an email earlier today, is for the council to take a position on supporting that amendment from Director Fain, and then optionally opposing the Amendment 1 from Supervisor Barron that takes away the 15% cap. So what that effectively does is it gives more money to Seattle and less to other cities that are not Seattle. So I'm of the opinion we should support the one that makes sure that other cities other than Seattle get more of the share. So if you have any questions, happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll go down and just looking for a yes or no on if we're fine with the council taking a position. Sarah Perry reached out to me and asked us to have one before, and so I'd love to have an official city position on this. Councilmember Boyer. Okay, Councilmember Lamb.
Yeah, I support this, and I believe SCA cities support this as well. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. I'm basically reading from SCA's email to us. Councilmember Treen.
Yes.
Councilmember
I
Stewart.
support the SCA position.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm done with my council report. Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to go really fast. I have a PIC meeting tomorrow night, and we're going to be talking about a draft rate letter regarding, my brain is just mush now with all this stuff, solid waste. And so I probably should bring something back to you guys. I probably will not vote for anything, given that we don't have time to really discuss it tonight. I attended the King Conservation District meeting today, and they are focusing on regional food sources and making sure that we don't have a lot of people with food insecurity. So, and I do plan to attend Executive Zahale's State of the County address tomorrow.
Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a very brief reminder that on Friday, June 19th, City Hall will be closed in observance of Juneteenth. So just we'll make sure and do this next week, but just letting folks know.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for making that challenge. We made it in time. All right. And with that, we are adjourned.
Sorry.
Okay.
Would someone like to make that motion for the resolution?